If you like the story, you can support the author on Patreon. Link is in the description. Additionally, if you would like to request novels and access my Google Drive where I have 200 plus audiobooks, then you can join my Patreon. Link is also provided in the description.
Chapter 1: The Orphanage. In the early morning in London, the fog was hazy. A boy about 11 years old walked in the wet courtyard. His name was Ivon Ambrosius. Should it be coming? Ivon had been looking forward to this day for 10 years since he came to this world. He walked to the mailbox, took out the letters inside, and then checked them one by one with the expectation of winning the prize. Still nothing. Not long after, Ivon sighed slightly, and a hint of loss appeared between his eyebrows. Hogwarts admission letter. Yes, the Hogwarts admission letter. Ivon is not from this world. He is a transmigrator. 10 years ago, he traveled to this world and became a baby abandoned in front of an orphanage. Mrs. Mina, the director of the orphanage, took him in and used the inscription Ambrosius on a ring left in the cradle as Ivon's surname. This ring also became the only clue to the identity of the child that Ivon traveled through. Of course, Ivon was not so interested in his own life experience. Because this is exactly the identity that the system arranged for him when he traveled to this world. That's right, as a traveler, Ivon has a system. System, open the attributes. As Ivon silently thought, a virtual panel appeared in front of him. Ivon Ambrosius. Age, 11 years old. Race, wizard. Gender, male. Bloodline, Ambrosius family. Talent, transfiguration mage, seer, silent casting. Attributes. Soul, 3, outstanding. Magic, 5, legendary. Constitution, 1, ordinary. Thinking, 3, outstanding. Mind, 2, excellent. Will, 2, excellent. Current potential points, 0. Ivon's system has no name, no intelligence, and will not answer any of Ivon's questions. To this day, Ivon has not even figured out how to obtain potential points. The only thing that makes Ivon feel a little relieved is that the system gave him a novice benefit at the beginning of his journey. Wizard Blood Extraction Scroll, unique. Effect: after use, you can randomly obtain the blood of an ancient wizard family and help complete the host's identity information in the current world. In this way, Ivon used the Wizard Blood Extraction Scroll and extracted a lineage known as Ambrosius. At the same time, the system also thoughtfully helped him complete his identity, ensuring he was no longer a person who appeared out of thin air. However, Ivon was not interested in the parents, family, or reasons why this body was abandoned. He is himself, and only himself. Even if the system arranges an identity, Ivon will not recognize two strangers as parents. For Ivon, things are fine as they are now. A feeling of loss momentarily surged in his heart, causing the mist surrounding Ivon to begin trembling slightly. Even the ground under his feet started to fracture, revealing red, magma-like cracks that emitted steaming vapors. Calm down. Almost at the same time, Ivon took a deep breath. Stay calm, calm down. Gradually, the disturbing vision disappeared, and the looming, terrifying power was soothed by him. It's getting stronger and stronger. As indicated on the system panel, a formidable power known as an obscurus was growing in Ivon's body. What is an obscurus? Ivon, who had watched the first and second films of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, had researched the settings of this potent magic. When some young wizards experience significant psychological trauma due to their magical abilities, they might suppress their magical power out of a self-defense instinct. Without proper guidance, these young wizards fail to learn how to harness and control their power, thus giving rise to a parasitic dark magical force known as an obscurus. Over the years, whenever Ivon's emotions fluctuated, whether from joy or sadness, the obscurus within him would become restless, attempting to burst forth from his body and recklessly release the magical power that had been suppressed for many years. To be honest, Ivon had no idea why he had become an obscurial. The director of his orphanage, Mrs. Mina, was a kind and gentle old woman who took exceptional care of Ivon. Having lived 2 lives, Ivon exhibited a level of intelligence that set him apart from other children. This distinction fostered positive relationships with his peers, sparing him the tragic childhood of bullying and isolation typically associated with obscurials. But even in such a nurturing environment, Ivon still manifested his abilities as a silent at the age of 5. The only explanation he could fathom was his excessive magical power. Current attributes. Soul, 3, excellent. Magic, 5, Legendary. Physique, 1, Ordinary. Thinking, 3, Excellent. Mind, 2, Excellent. Will, 2, Excellent. 5 points in magic power, rated as legendary by the system, signify a tremendous potential for magical power growth in Ivon. Over the years, Ivon concluded that these attributes did not represent his current physical condition but rather a direct display of his potential and talent. The so-called 5 points of magic power indicate that Ivon possesses a legendary level of potential in magical growth. Ivon had initially underestimated the potency of the ancient wizard bloodline of Ambrosius. He thought that 5 points in magic power were mediocre and that it would make him slightly stronger than average wizards. But he was mistaken. Ivon did not understand how the potential points were calculated in the system. However, the magical upheavals triggered by the 5 points of magic completely surpassed his understanding of wizardry in the Harry Potter world. In his memory, the most powerful figure in the Harry Potter universe should be Aurelius Dumbledore from Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, also known as Credence Barebone, who harbored an obscurus. The image of a magical explosion, strong enough to destroy half a mountain from miles away, is still vivid in Ivon's mind. Ivon feels that if he were to fully release the obscurus within him, he could easily match the destructive power of Credence as seen in the first Fantastic Beasts movie. It's notable to mention that Ivon is only 11 years old, while Credence in the first film is already 18. Adding to his impressive capabilities are his 2 magical talents, Metamorphosis and Prophecy. These talents exemplify the formidable legacy of the Ambrosius surname. Metamorphosis grants Ivon the ability to alter his appearance at will, without the need for spells or polyjuice potion. He can transform into any human he has ever seen, regardless of age, physique, or gender, and he can complete these changes in an instant. The only limitation is that Ivon's transformations are confined to human forms. This ability is somewhat similar to that of Nymphadora Tonks from the original books, who also possesses metamorphic abilities. However, Ivon's metamorphosis differs in that he can't adopt non-human features like Tonks, who can morph her nose into a pig's or her mouth into a duck's. Instead, Ivon can alter his body shape, height, and gender, making his human transformations more precise than those of Tonks. Yet, metamorphosis has its flaws. For example, if he attempts to become a half-giant or a half-Vila like Hagrid or Fleur, he can only mimic their appearances but cannot acquire their racial traits. Nevertheless, Ivon senses that his abilities as a metamorphosis mage have not reached their full potential. If I delve deeper, I might break this limit. Hey! As these thoughts occupied his mind, Ivon's gaze inadvertently swept across the glass window beside him. At that moment, through the blurred reflection on the window, Ivon glimpsed a vision. It was a pure white owl with a letter tied to its feet, and a boy who looked exactly like Ivon was opening the window to welcome it in with a smile. Soon, the images faded from the window. I have to say, being a prophecy mage is really convenient. Another inherited talent of the Ambrosius family is known as prophecy mage. Ivon knew of only one other person who possessed this ability, and that was Gellert Grindelwald, Dumbledore's infamous rival and one-time friend. Come to think of it, it seems Grindelwald also had these abilities of mine. Ivon recalled that in the films, Grindelwald was capable of transforming his appearance without relying on polyjuice potion, a skill akin to metamorphosis. Moreover, he shared the gift of prophecy, just like Ivon. This led Ivon to speculate whether there might be a connection between the Ambrosius lineage and Grindelwald. The similarities in their magical talents were striking, and Ivon couldn't help but let his imagination run wild. Let's head back. Grindelwald and such matters are too far removed from me. Though Ivon was a time traveler, his desire was to traverse this magical realm and uncover the mysteries and origins of magic, not to entangle himself in the tumults of the wizarding world. Above all, Ivon needed to find a solution for the obscurus within him. This unpredictable force was like a ticking time bomb. Ivon didn't want to become the next Credence Barebone, eventually succumbing to the erosion of the obscurus. Like Credence, he had survived past the age of 10, learning to suppress and control the obscurus in his body to some degree, even harnessing it as a source of strength. However, Ivon could also feel the strain the obscurus placed on his body. 5 points of magical power not only endowed Ivon with formidable magical abilities but also nourished the growth of the obscurus. I will grow stronger, and so will the obscurus. If this continued, Ivon feared the obscurus might eventually consume him. Fortunately, Ivon had glimpsed some fragments of his future through his prophecies. The clearest vision was of him as a teenager, around 16 or 17, sporting a prefect badge on his chest. Knowing that one must be at least a fifth-year student at Hogwarts to be a prefect, Ivon inferred he could survive healthily until he was at least 15 years old. 5 years should be enough for me to find a way to control the obscurus. With this thought, Ivon handed over a letter to the staff of the orphanage, exchanged a brief greeting with Mrs. Mina, and returned to his room on the 3rd floor. Knock knock knock. About half an hour later, a knock came from the window. Ivon turned his head and saw the owl he had foreseen, carrying his Hogwarts admission letter. Thank you for your hard work. Ivon opened the window to let the owl in. The snow-white owl flapped its wings inside the room before settling gently on Ivon's desk, extending the leg with the letter tied to it. Ivon removed the letter, then broke up the half-eaten bread on the cabinet and scattered it on the table. You're welcome, eat up. Coo. The owls in the wizarding world are notably sentient. It turned its head and affectionately rubbed against Ivon's palm, then bowed its head to peck at the bread crumbs. Cute little guy. Ivon smiled slightly as he turned over the envelope. The back of the envelope bore a wax seal featuring a shield emblem, at the center of which was a large capital H encircled by a lion, an eagle, a badger, and a snake, symbols representing the 4 Hogwarts houses. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Headmaster, Albus Dumbledore. President of the International Confederation of Wizards, Order of Merlin, First Class, Chief Warlock of the Wizengamot. Dear Mr. Ambrosius, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted to study at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Attached is a list of necessary books and equipment. The term is scheduled to start on September 1st. In view of your special circumstances, Hogwarts will send a representative to your residence to address any questions you might have and to offer the necessary assistance. Yours sincerely, Minerva McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress. After reading the letter, Ivon mused aloud, I wonder which Professor Hogwarts will send over. Ding! The host has received the Hogwarts admission letter and is awarded with free potential points x1. The system prompt echoed in his mind, and for a moment, Ivon thought he was hallucinating. Blimey! Ivon's sudden shout nearly startled the owl mid-meal, causing it to nearly tumble off the table. Sorry. Fortunately, the owl was professional, accustomed to such reactions. It wasn't the first time it had encountered outbursts from little wizards from Muggle families shocked by their admission notices. System. Ivon called to the system in his mind, but unfortunately, received no response. In desperation, Ivon silently recited, open the attribute bar, and sure enough, he saw that there was one new potential point added to the previously 0 total. Without dwelling on how to use this potential point, Ivon curbed his excitement to prevent any inadvertent magical outbursts and quickly wrote his reply. Are you full? Observing the owl nod and raise its head, Ivon stroked its head and carefully tied the reply letter to its leg. Coo. The owl seemed to enjoy Ivon's touch, cooing happily a few times before it flew out of the window, disappearing into the morning mist. Coo. With the task completed, Ivon breathed a sigh of relief. He glanced at his attribute list. Attributes. Soul, 3+. Magic, 5+. Physique, 1+. Thinking, 3+. Mind, 2+. Will, 2+. Current potential points, 1. System, why can't I increase my magic attribute further? Ivon questioned, grappling with the overwhelming magical power he currently possessed, which was becoming a burden due to its vastness. Magic power upgrade failed, insufficient experience points. Experience points. Ivon was puzzled. He hadn't encountered this term before. To increase the magic attribute from 5 to 6, experience points are required. He understood little about the difference between 6 points of magic, termed as Apocalypse, and 5 points, known as Legend by the system. The names suggested grandeur and immense power, but the practical difference between them was elusive. However, now wasn't the moment to delve into these distinctions. The pressing issue was deciding how best to utilize the newly acquired potential points. Chapter 2 Seer. I don't know what the limit of attribute points is, maybe 7, or even higher. The number 7 holds a magical significance in the Harry Potter world. Voldemort created 7 Horcruxes, there are 7 Weasley siblings, 7 Quidditch players on each team, 7 years of study at Hogwarts, wands typically costing 7 galleons, and 7 main courses taught at the school. If 9 is considered a significant number in other worlds, then here, 7 is the emblem of magic and mystery. Assuming that the 6 major attributes can only be increased to 7 points each, I currently possess 16 attribute points, making main 26 points shy of the maximum 42. In this light, careful consideration is needed regarding how to use the attribute points. Ivon believes that it's better to have a bird in hand than 10 in the forest. Rather than spreading potential points thinly across many attributes and becoming a jack of all trades, master of none, it would be more strategic to focus intensively on a few attributes. Having experience with gaming in his previous life, Ivon understands the importance of specialization. My highest attribute now is magic. Next are soul and thinking, both of which are at 3 points. A 3-point attribute is rated as outstanding by the system. Ivon is uncertain about the benefits of an outstanding soul. However, outstanding thinking has endowed Ivon with a memory, computational ability, and reaction time far exceeding that of ordinary individuals. For instance, concerning memory alone, Ivon can generally recall everything he has observed in a short period. He has tested this ability. He can read a 10,000 word document in a very short span and recite it verbatim. The drawback is that this enhanced recall does not last long. It persists for only 1 day at most. If the amount to be remembered is more extensive, the memories will become distorted. Of course, Ivon can read materials multiple times or review them frequently to ensure the knowledge is firmly imprinted in his mind. By comparison, if ordinary people can reach this level with only 3 points in thinking, then the value of this attribute point is truly extraordinary. Indeed, the shorthand capability provided by 3 points of thinking is quite remarkable, almost comparable to the legendary eidetic memory. If I'm not mistaken, achieving 4 points in thinking likely grants the ability to remember everything you see. This benefit applies just to memory. For more extensive testing, Ivon knew he had to experiment himself to determine the exact effects. System, add points. Ivon decided to allocate the new potential points to the soul attribute. He prioritized improving the soul attribute to better control the magical power in his body and address the lethal threat posed by his own unrestrained magic. Among the 6 attributes, the soul is ranked first by the system, highlighting its significance. Add points successfully. Soul, 3-4. Ivon checked the feedback from the system. He paused, feeling himself for any changes and found none as he had anticipated. Strange. Ivon opened his attribute panel to review. Attributes. Soul, 4, rare. Magic, 5, legendary. Physique, 1, ordinary. Thinking, 3, outstanding. Mind, 2, excellent. Will, 2, excellent. Current potential points, 0. The 4-point soul attribute, rated as rare by the system, held promise for Ivon. He was confident that enhancing his soul talent wouldn't be without effect. In any world, the soul is regarded as profoundly mysterious. This holds especially true in the Harry Potter universe, where the significance of the soul is undeniable. Ivon speculated that his prophetic talent was likely linked to the soul attribute. The stronger the soul, the more acute the perception, enhancing both the accuracy and clarity of the prophecies. Driven by a sudden inspiration, Ivon glanced at a small mirror on his bedside table, pondering which Hogwarts faculty member would be sent to assist him. In the next moment, the image in the mirror shifted, and an old woman wearing square glasses and dark green robes appeared. Professor McGonagall. Ivon recognized her almost instantly. She was Minerva McGonagall, the professor of transfiguration at Hogwarts. Can I predict accurately? Surprise flickered in Ivon's eyes. His previous prophecies had been largely passive receptions, rather than deliberate visions of the future. However, with the enhanced soul attribute, Ivon distinctly felt an increase in the controllability of his prophecy mage abilities. Yet, this control was not without its limits. Fate is not something to be glimpsed at leisure. Predicting the future is akin to staring into the abyss. Carelessness could lead to a backlash. Those who play with fate will eventually be played by fate. A dark premonition struck Ivon, imparting a crucial understanding of how to responsibly use his ability for directed prophecy. First, the result of a prediction cannot be changed. Second, you must not recklessly disclose your fate. Third, exercise caution when predicting events related to your own future. These guidelines emerged from Ivon's intuition or perhaps an inspired revelation, providing him with keys to avoid the perilous backlash of meddling with fate. Ivon understood the rationale behind the second and third points. Predicting the future is akin to fortune-telling. Naturally, one must not casually reveal such insights to others. Moreover, fortune tellers typically avoid reading their own fortunes, similar to how doctors generally do not treat themselves because doing so can lead to undue stress and panic. Although the second and third rules come with limitations, they are not absolute. Not easily implies that predictions for others might be permissible under necessary circumstances. Avoiding personal predictions means that in critical moments, Ivon might foresee and thus evade impending calamities. However, what truly concerned Ivon was the first of these rules: the predicted results cannot be changed. Indeed, time in the Harry Potter world flows only in one direction. Ivon recalled the time turner from Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, which underscored this principle: when you travel through time, no matter what alterations you make, you're merely fulfilling a segment of history, not altering the past. Similarly, the grip of fate is formidable. Consider how Voldemort's obsession with Harry persisted until his demise. Fate decreed that one would ultimately fall at the hands of the other. Both Harry and Neville were prophesied as possible vanquishers of Voldemort. However, in Ivan's view, it seemed more accurate to say that Voldemort met his end as dictated by fate, rather than being defeated by someone else. Reflecting on it this way, the influence of fate is indeed daunting. Ivon refrained from delving deeper. With his current level of knowledge and power, he felt unprepared to wrestle with such profound mysteries of fate and time. Fortunately, Ivon is not one to stubbornly resist the immutable laws of the world. Understanding that the rules of this universe are fixed, he has no intention of recklessly challenging them. With the soul upgraded to level 4, I can now predict the future more precisely, Ivon mused. Yet, he was not convinced by the notion that such predictions could not be altered. In his view, any limitations were simply challenges to be overcome by gaining greater strength. Perhaps with further enhancements to the soul, I might even glimpse the true nature of fate. As he contemplated this, Ivon noticed something peculiar, strange, dust-like particles floating in his field of vision. Hey! He paused, taken aback. Looking closer, Ivon saw many tiny fluorescent lights suspended in the air, where previously there had been nothing. What is this? Magical elements. His mind raced to the elemental forces described in every Western fantasy novel he had read. When Ivon focused more intently on these glimmering spots, his vision zoomed in as if through a microscope, revealing their true form. They were not mere particles but tiny creatures with diaphanous, butterfly-like wings. However, these beings bore little resemblance to the charming elves of folklore. Instead, they looked more akin to butterfly-like mosquitoes. What are they? Ivon attempted to wave them away, but found his actions had no effect. Each time he dispersed them, another wave would appear to replace the last. Among these peculiar entities, Ivon also spotted a small creature with curved horns and a fur-covered body, from which bubbles continuously emitted. The sight of it strangely induced a feeling of drowsiness in Ivon, prompting him to avert his gaze swiftly. Ivon was certain these bizarre creatures were a consequence of his soul's enhancement to level 4. He closed his eyes and tried to calm his mind as much as possible. Ha! Taking a deep breath, Ivon opened his eyes once more, and the fantastical visions before him had vanished. Just as I suspected, I can control this kind of sight, he mused, deciding to call this enhanced perception the soul perspective, which allowed him to see scenes imperceptible to ordinary eyes. So, could those creatures I saw be akin to microorganisms in the magical world? Ivon felt confident in his hypothesis. Since there are magical creatures in this world, it stands to reason that, beyond humans, other entities might also possess magical powers. The diversity of life forms surely extends beyond just animals and plants to include various microorganisms. Building on this, Ivon wondered if, analogous to the mundane world where humans have discovered bacteria, viruses, and tardigrades, there might be corresponding magical counterparts inhabiting the unseen realms of the wizarding world. The tiny butterfly-like insects, and the small creatures with curved horns and bubbles issuing from their noses. There were undoubtedly more entities, but Ivon had only glimpsed a fraction of this hidden magical ecosystem. The magic in the Harry Potter universe might not always boast immense destructive power, but in other respects, its depths were profound. Transfiguration defying the law of conservation of mass, spells that nearly grant any wish, the time turner from his third year, and the undetectable extension charm altering spatial dimensions. These were merely the phenomena documented in novels and films. Now, living in a real magical world, Ivon understood that what was depicted in books and movies was merely the surface. The true expanse of magic was vastly greater. There is more to this world than depicted in the books indeed. Watching an owl diminish into the distance, Ivan's lips curled into a smile. I'm looking forward to discovering more and more. Chapter 3 A Lil Prophecy Show. With expectations of Professor McGonagall's arrival, Ivon spent a few more days at the orphanage. No unexpected situations occurred, and everything remained as peaceful as usual. Then, on that day, a figure appeared at the orphanage's door. It was Professor McGonagall, just as Ivon had predicted a few days earlier. Upon seeing a visitor, the children who were playing stopped immediately. They began to tidy their clothes and tried their best to present themselves favorably. Clearly, the children viewed Professor McGonagall as a beacon of hope for leaving the orphanage. Professor McGonagall made an effort not to dwell on the sight of the needy children. She walked directly toward the main building of the orphanage and encountered a young girl who was cleaning. "Good morning, I have an appointment with Mrs. Mina. Is she available?" she inquired politely. The young girl, recognizing the importance of the visitor, quickly fetched Mrs. Mina. Mrs. Mina, a kindly old woman in her 60s with thinning white hair and eyes magnified by reading glasses, appeared surprised. "Hello," she greeted the visitor. Mrs. Mina couldn't quite place the face. "Excuse me, who are you?" "I am the deputy headmistress of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Minerva McGonagall. I believe you were informed of my visit, regarding Mr. Ambrosius's admission to our school." Mrs. Mina initially looked puzzled as she took the papers handed to her, then her expression brightened. Yes, of course, but I didn't expect someone of your stature to come here personally. We occasionally provide direct support to children who show exceptional talent," Professor McGonagall explained, having prepared all necessary documentation and subtly reinforced with Confundu's charms to ensure smooth communication. Professor McGonagall accepted the papers back from Mrs. Mina. To an outsider, they might have appeared almost blank, yet to muggles like Mrs. Mina, these documents seemed comprehensive, dispelling any doubts with their magically enhanced persuasiveness. "Excuse me, may I see Mr. Ambrosius now?" "Oh, of course." Mrs. Mina, treating Professor McGonagall with the utmost respect befitting a guest of her stature, led her eagerly to Ivon's room. Along the way, she spoke highly of Ivon. She described him as a kind and intelligent boy who was not only well-mannered and sensible but also took on a nurturing role for the younger children in the orphanage, significantly easing the burden on the staff. "That boy is very smart. Your school will certainly not regret selecting young Ivon." Professor McGonagall listened attentively to Mrs. Mina's praises. As a dedicated educator, gathering more insights about Ivon would enable her to better support his transition and future success in the wizarding world. "Here we are, this is young Ivon's room." Mrs. Mina knocked gently and called out. Ivon opened the door, and Professor McGonagall was standing right there. After ensuring that Ivon was ready to receive his guest, Mrs. Mina excused herself, leaving them to talk privately. "Hello, Professor McGonagall." Ivon invited her into the room naturally and offered her a cup. "I apologize, I only have boiled water to offer." "That's quite all right," Professor McGonagall replied, her gaze fixed on Ivon with a hint of curiosity. "I must ask, you seem to know who I am." "Rather than knowing, it's more accurate to say I anticipated your visit," Ivon explained, sitting across from Professor McGonagall. "From the admission letter I received, Hogwarts is a school for magic, correct?" "Yes," Professor McGonagall confirmed, nodding. "I am the deputy headmistress of Hogwarts, Minerva McGonagall, and I will also be your transfiguration professor." "Transfiguration?" Ivon mused, already familiar with the concept. "Could you demonstrate it for me?" Professor McGonagall obliged without hesitation. She drew her wand and transformed a nearby cabinet into a cat, then promptly changed it back. Wow! While Ivon had witnessed such magic in films and even seen glimpses of Professor McGonagall teaching in his uncontrollable prophecies, experiencing it firsthand still filled him with awe. Such a large cabinet morphed into a cat, this was enough to overturn any scientist's understanding of reality. "It's simply part of our curriculum," Professor McGonagall said with a smile. "You'll learn to do this and much more at Hogwarts." "That's fantastic!" Ivon responded, his excitement palpable. "You must be wondering how I knew your name beforehand. I assure you, I didn't overhear your conversation with Mrs. Mina. But since you teach at a school of magic, I presume you can appreciate my particular circumstances, can't you?" Ivon gestured towards a mirror placed to the side and explained, "For instance, when I look at reflective surfaces like mirrors, water, or glass, certain images appear to me." "Images?" Professor McGonagall's brow furrowed in curiosity. "Could you elaborate?" "Certainly," Ivon replied. In just a few minutes, Mrs. Mina will arrive with snacks." He then proceeded to detail the future as he had seen it through his prophetic ability. Ivon described not only the types and quantities of snacks but also Mrs. Mina's exact reactions upon entering the room and how Professor McGonagall herself would respond, all with striking clarity. Professor McGonagall was visibly taken aback by Ivon's assertion. "You're saying you saw the future? You made a prediction." Prophecy was a form of magic Professor McGonagall was aware of, yet she had always been skeptical of its reliability. Much like her reservations about Professor Trelawney, whose predictions she often regarded as dubious at best, McGonagall was generally dismissive of prophecies. Knock knock. Just then, a knock came at the door. As it opened, Mrs. Mina entered, placing several plates of snacks in front of them, speaking the exact words Ivon had predicted. "Excuse me, is there any problem?" Mrs. Mina inquired after noticing Professor McGonagall's startled expression. "No, it's all right," Professor McGonagall managed to reply, her mind racing as she reconsidered her stance on prophecy. "I just feel a little at a loss." After the voice fell, Professor McGonagall realized that her reaction was exactly the same as what Ivon had just told her. "How is that possible?" Professor McGonagall quickly looked at Ivon, and saw the boy smiling as he picked up a cookie and put it in his mouth. "I'm glad you don't mind." Mrs. Mina smiled at Professor McGonagall and closed the door. "Well, excuse me." Chapter 4 Extremely Rare Ability. Professor McGonagall's eyes were full of astonishment. She was now convinced that Ivon possessed the gift of prophecy. Just moments ago, she had reacted almost instinctively, and it had turned out exactly as Ivon had predicted. Ivon asked, "I think my talent must be what you refer to as magic, Professor." Seeing Ivon's nonchalant attitude, as if this ability were commonplace in the wizarding world, Professor McGonagall said seriously, "Your gift is extremely rare, even in the magical world. To my knowledge, only one person has had a similar ability." "Oh? Who is it?" "Sorry, but I cannot reveal their name." Professor McGonagall apologized. That person brought unimaginable changes to the wizarding world. "Of course, believe me, Mr. Ambrosius, this has nothing to do with your talent. You are a good child." To this day, whenever Professor McGonagall thought of Grindelwald, she still felt a chill down her spine. McGonagall, in this FIC, was in the timeline of Fantastic Beasts here, so she is decades older than in Harry Potter. Ivon knew that the person Professor McGonagall was referring to must be Gellert Grindelwald. However, Professor McGonagall clearly wouldn't associate Ivon with Grindelwald just because of a similar prophetic ability. "Your gift is known as a seer in the wizarding world, a rare magical talent." Professor McGonagall had thought that guiding new students would be a routine task, but she never expected to find such a gem as Ivon. "A seer, a natural-born prophet. Believe me, Mr. Ambrosius," McGonagall said earnestly, "you will achieve great things in the future." "Thank you, and please just call me Ivon." Professor McGonagall had a very good impression of Ivon, not only because of his special talent but also because he was as well-behaved and sensible as Mrs. Mina had said. Thinking about Ivon's background, Professor McGonagall couldn't help but feel sorry for the child. At Hogwarts, Muggle-born wizards were not uncommon. But an orphan, a Muggle-born orphan. In Slytherin, he would undoubtedly be at the bottom of the food chain. Pureblood family, pureblood half-blood Muggle-born orphan. Yes, Ivon belonged to the last category, essentially the lowest of the low. Better than Muggles, but not by much. This child, he shouldn't be sorted into Slytherin, right? Professor McGonagall knew the sorting hat's criteria well. Slytherin generally only accepted purebloods. While there were occasionally ambitious half-blood and Muggle-born wizards, those were rare exceptions. Ivon, being a Muggle-born, eliminated any chance of him being sorted into Slytherin. As for the other three houses, Professor McGonagall thought he would fit in any of them. Of course, she hoped he would be sorted into Gryffindor. As the head of Gryffindor House, Professor McGonagall felt she could take the best care of Ivon. At this thought, Professor McGonagall suddenly paused. Is this child really Muggle-born? A natural seer, such a talent, was almost unheard of in the wizarding world. Yet, it had manifested in a Muggle-born. Professor McGonagall found it hard to understand. She wasn't a blood purist or a supporter of bloodline theories and was herself a half-blood witch. However, from a purely academic perspective, the likelihood of Ivon's parents being wizards was much higher than being Muggles. Professor McGonagall couldn't recall any wizarding family with the surname Ambrosius. With this in mind, Professor McGonagall inquired about Ivon's background. Ivon had no identifying items other than a piece of paper with his name when he crossed over. He handed his ring to Professor McGonagall. After examining it, she found nothing special about it. Returning the ring with an apologetic look, Professor McGonagall said, "I have never seen the crest on this ring before." "It's all right, I'm not very interested in my background," Ivon said calmly, "I'm more curious about the magical world. By the way, Professor, where can I buy the items listed here?" Ivon smiled slightly and pulled out the list from his acceptance letter. "I once saw a magical alley reflected in the lake. Is it there? Is that another prophecy?" Professor McGonagall was increasingly amazed by Ivon's prophetic abilities. "What an incredible gift!" "Yes, we call that alley Diagon Alley. It's the largest wizarding market in Britain. And don't worry about tuition fees." Professor McGonagall indicated for Ivon to prepare. Attending Hogwarts is free, with food and accommodation provided by the school. Additionally, we offer a certain amount of galleons as a scholarship for young wizards like you. To help Ivon understand the concept of galleons, Professor McGonagall explained the wizarding currency. 1 galleon equals 17 sickles, which equals 493 nuts. "So, shall we head to Diagon Alley now? I understand your curiosity about the wizarding world, but I need to guide another new student first." Professor McGonagall's current task wasn't just to guide Ivon. Compared to Ivon, she still had to speak with another student's parents and convince them of the existence of magic. Professor McGonagall arranged to return in the afternoon to take Ivon and the other new student to Diagon Alley to purchase the required items. Once Professor McGonagall left, Ivon was alone in his room. Ivon had already considered revealing his prophetic abilities. Having transmigrated over, he didn't want to live in constant fear. Ivon had read many Harry Potter fanfictions where the protagonists often saw Dumbledore as an adversary, constantly thinking about how to defend against his Legilimency and fearing their identity as a transmigrator would be exposed. It's not that one shouldn't be wary of Dumbledore. Indeed, Dumbledore was honorable and had a moral code, and wouldn't invade others' privacy lightly. However, a little caution never hurts. What puzzled Ivon was that these transmigrators would often overlook Snape, even seeking him out. Snape's Legilimency could deceive even Voldemort. His skills in fabricating memories, hiding emotions, and probing secrets might not match Dumbledore's, but to a first-year student, both were unbeatable. Ivon didn't consider himself exceptionally intelligent. He chose to reveal his seer talent to Professor McGonagall because it could explain his foreknowledge. Besides, Legilimency wasn't like mind-reading in Marvel, it couldn't reveal all of someone's memories at once. Essentially, Legilimency was a form of telepathy, only capable of reading surface thoughts. To truly delve into someone's memories, a wizard would need to use their wand to extract the memories from the mind. However, neither Dumbledore nor Snape would resort to such measures. Using Legilimency on a student at Hogwarts would clearly violate the principles of the professors and invade the student's privacy. Chapter 5 Meeting the Bushy-Haired Girl. Occlumency is a must-learn magic. And until I find a way to learn it, if someone reads my memories, I can always explain it away as a prophecy. Having transmigrated over once, Ivon didn't want to get involved in intrigues. He yearned to explore the mysteries of magic, to experience the wonders of this world, and to live an extraordinary life. As for getting involved in Dumbledore's plan to train a savior, Ivon was undecided. He wouldn't dismiss the original story or concoct conspiracy theories based on preconceived notions. Similarly, Ivon wouldn't seek out Harry and Ron to befriend them just because their names were familiar. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. Ivon munched on some snacks and sipped his tea. Fuck them. The savior's future is not my concern. I just need to take care of myself. Thus, the time quickly moved to the afternoon. The morning mist had cleared, and it was a lovely day, with bright sunshine lifting Ivon's spirits. They should be arriving soon. Ivon glanced at the clock on the wall and then positioned himself where he had foreseen. Shortly after, with a soft sound, two figures materialized out of thin air, Professor McGonagall and another new student she was guiding. This was a girl of about 10, with brown eyes and thick, bushy brown hair, and notably large front teeth. Ugh! Cough, cough, cough. Your first time operating, that's normal. Professor McGonagall gently patted the girl's back, but the girl straightened up, took a deep breath, and suppressed the discomfort from operating. I'm fine, just a little uncomfortable. The girl lifted her head stubbornly, determined to show her strong adaptability. Pfft! Hearing the sound, the girl looked towards Ivon, seeing a boy around her age stifling a laugh. Mr. Ambrosius, it's not gentlemanly to laugh at a lady. Professor McGonagall wasn't surprised that Ivon was waiting there, it was clear he had foreseen this. Sorry, Professor McGonagall. Ivon had already recognized the girl as Hermione Granger, the brain of the original trio. The original Harry Potter movies could easily be titled Hermione and Her Two Useless Friends, Ivon thought, with some justification. Without Hermione, Harry and Ron might not have even made it through the first book. Hermione glared at Ivon, displeased by his laughter at her expense. Ivon smiled. Like you, I'm also a new student at Hogwarts this year. And I apologize for my rudeness earlier. Hermione scrutinized Ivon. She wasn't one to judge by appearances, but she had to admit Ivon was quite attractive. Still, the memory of his earlier laugh made her annoyed. Maybe my performance wasn't great, but I'm sure that's only temporary. Ivon was a bit taken aback by her competitiveness. Out of politeness, she extended her hand. Nice to meet you, Mr. Ambrosius. This meant she accepted Ivan's apology. You can just call me Ivon. Then you can call me Hermione. So? Are you a wizard? I mean, not like me. Miss Granger, Mr. Ambrosius, like you, is a muggle-born wizard. Ivon nodded and pointed to a nearby orphanage. To add, I live there. Hermione noticed the orphanage sign and immediately realized Ivon was an orphan. She quickly apologized. I'm sorry, Hermione, though eager to prove herself, was also anxious about entering the wizarding world from the muggle world, fearing she might not measure up. This insecurity made her somewhat overbearing, but upon learning Ivon was an orphan, she felt a surge of sympathy. Ivon assured her he didn't care about his origins and asked Professor McGonagall, Professor, are we heading to Diagon Alley now? Professor McGonagall inquired about Hermione's condition. The girl straightened her flat chest. I'm fine, really. We can leave now. Seeing Hermione's determination, Professor McGonagall said, hold onto my arm. Hermione quickly grabbed McGonagall's arm and reminded Ivon to brace for the discomfort of apparition. Ivon felt his body being squeezed through a tight tube. When he regained his senses, they were in front of a shabby, old pub. After operating twice, Hermione's face was pale. Yet, she still looked at Ivon. Seeing he seemed unaffected, Hermione's eyes widened in surprise. Aren't you a muggle-born? Why aren't you reacting? Even Professor McGonagall watched Ivon curiously. Admittedly, some young wizards were naturally gifted, but most found apparition uncomfortable. I did experience it for the first time. As for not feeling much, Ivon suspected it was because of his obscurial nature. The experience felt similar to turning into an obscurus. But he wasn't ready to reveal his obscurial nature yet. If it were Dumbledore, Ivan's status as an obscurial might gain him sympathy. Not revealing it to Professor McGonagall was because an obscurial's power was too dark and dangerous. Allowing an obscurial into Hogwarts was like endangering all the young wizards. If Ivon lost control, not just young wizards but even adults could be easily crushed. Professor McGonagall might accept a werewolf as a student and teacher, but could she accept a ticking time bomb like Ivon? Ivon hadn't seen this answer in any prophecy yet. But one thing was sure, he couldn't share this secret with Hermione. If word got out, he'd be expelled. Parents wouldn't tolerate an obscurial near their children. Even with Dumbledore's assurances and Professor's attestations of Ivan's control, adult wizards wouldn't accept him at Hogwarts. A strong body can lessen the side effects of apparition. Professor McGonagall guessed Ivon was hiding something but wouldn't pry. Meanwhile, Hermione's competitiveness nearly overflowed. Ivon could only think how unexpected her determination was. Professor McGonagall led them into the leaky cauldron. Contrary to their expectations of mystery, the pub was dark and dirty. The patrons greeted Professor McGonagall warmly. The barkeep, Tom, eagerly asked, Professor McGonagall, what can I get you? The hunchbacked, bald Tom, resembling a bat, gave Ivon a creepy vibe. Ah! Hermione, startled by Tom, instinctively hid behind Ivon. Realizing this was undignified, she bravely stepped away from Ivon. Chapter 6 Diagon Alley. Oh, two little ones I haven't seen before. Standing behind the bar, Tom leaned over with a smile, are you first years at Hogwarts? Yes, Tom. Professor McGonagall nodded at Tom, the barkeeper, and led Hermione and Ivon forward. Also, it's not advisable to drink on duty. Haha, Hagrid would get a kick out of hearing that, Tom chuckled, teasingly referring to Hagrid's known fondness for a pint. Ignoring Tom's jest, the trio walked through the bar to a secluded courtyard enclosed by walls, where a trash can and some weeds lay scattered. Remember, count 3 bricks up and 2 bricks across. Professor McGonagall instructed Ivon and Hermione to observe as she counted the bricks carefully. She then drew her wand and tapped the wall thrice at the designated spots. Gala la! Before the astonished eyes of Ivon and Hermione, the bricks began to shift, gradually forming a small opening. The opening widened until it became a large archway, revealing a street paved with cobblestones. Welcome to Diagon Alley. As they stepped onto the bustling street, the attire of the passers-by ranging from the simple to the bizarre caught the eyes of Ivon and Hermione. Hermione, in particular, was captivated by the scene before her, unable to tear her gaze away. The allure of wizards and magic was particularly strong for a young girl like Hermione, who, like many children, had often dreamed of being a princess. As they proceeded through the archway, Hermione glanced back to see the archway contract swiftly, sealing shut and returning to a plain wall. Diagon Alley is the bustling commercial heart of the British wizarding world, home to many top-tier brand stores in the magical community, each boasting a flagship location here. Ivon surveyed his surroundings, taking in both the familiar and unfamiliar shops lining the bustling streets of Diagon Alley. He passed by Ollivanders' wand shop, Zonko's joke shop, Florian Fortescue's ice cream parlor, shops for stationery, thrift stores, a wizarding travel agency, a Quidditch boutique, Flourish and Blott's bookstore, Madame Malkin's robes for all occasions, a cauldron shop, a magical creature shop, and various other magical establishments, including an owl emporium. The real wizarding world is much broader and peculiar than what is depicted in novels and films, Ivon thought, awestruck. Professor McGonagall, leading the way, directed Hermione and Ivon to Gringotts first. They needed to exchange Muggle currency for gold galleons, particularly for Hermione, as she came from a non-magical family. For young wizards from Muggle backgrounds, there's a yearly limit on how much Muggle currency can be exchanged for wizarding money. Given Hermione's father was a dentist, a well-compensated profession in the Muggle world, if the exchange rate mentioned by J.K. Rowling of £5 to 1 galleon was accurate, Mr. Granger could potentially exchange a significant amount of galleons for Hermione right there. What a magical place, Hermione remarked, clutching Ivan's hand, something she hadn't stopped doing since their encounter with Tom at the bar. Miss Granger was understandably anxious upon entering the wizarding world for the first time. Initially, she might have intended to compare her capabilities with Ivon, a fellow Muggle-born. However, faced with a new and unfamiliar environment, it was natural for her to seek comfort in familiarity. So naturally, Ivon, who seemed so composed and assured, became a source of stability for Hermione, prompting her to subconsciously lean on him for support. Yes, Ivon reassured her, gently squeezing her hand in encouragement. Living in such a world must be incredibly fascinating. Aren't you afraid at all? Hermione asked, looking up at him. Hermione admired Ivan's maturity despite their being the same age. Maybe it's because I've been living in an orphanage, Ivon suggested. Hermione murmured, her voice dropping. I'm sorry, I didn't mean. It's okay, I don't consider it a painful memory, Ivon reassured her, his demeanor making Hermione feel slightly embarrassed for her presumption. By the way, I just noticed a bookstore, Ivon changed the subject, sensing Hermione's discomfort. After we exchange wizarding currency, perhaps we could buy our books together and share them. It would save a lot of money. Yet. Hermione's spirits lifted at the mention of books, and she quickly reverted to her more confident self, the scholarly Miss Granger. Professor McGonagall, observing the two budding friends, felt a sense of contentment that they were forming bonds before even starting school. Soon, the trio approached a snow-white building that stood out starkly against the surrounding shops. Beside its shiny bronze doors, a figure in a scarlet and gold uniform caught their attention. This individual was a head shorter than both Hermione and Ivon, with a dark, shrewd face and a neatly pointed beard. Ivon noted the goblin's disproportionately long hands and feet. As they entered, the goblin bowed respectfully. What are they? Hermione whispered, curiosity piqued. Goblins, Ivon responded, recognizing the guardians of the wizard bank from his readings. Professor McGonagall explained, goblins work for Gringotts, safeguarding the wealth of the wizarding world. Hermione absorbed this information without comment, but Ivon couldn't hide his concern. He was vaguely aware of the strained relationship between wizards and goblins, finding it perplexing that wizards would entrust their entire banking system to what he remembered as the losers of their society. In his past readings about the Harry Potter universe, it struck him as remarkable that those often on the losing side of historical conflicts controlled such a critical economic artery. "What's wrong, Ivon?" Hermione inquired, noticing his furrowed brow. "Nothing," Ivon replied, opting for discretion. He sensed that such topics were better left undiscussed in this setting. Continuing on, the trio passed through a second door. This door was crafted from silver, and words were engraved upon it. "Enter, stranger. But beware of the consequences of greed. For those who take that which does not belong to them will pay most dearly. Thus if you seek a share of treasure from our vaults that is not yours to claim, you have been warned, thief. Beware bringing evil upon yourself instead of riches." The stern warning on the doors served as a grim reminder of the goblin's strict and unyielding stewardship of the treasures within. Tisk. As Ivon read the stern warnings, his eyes narrowed slightly. These goblins are troublesome. The two goblins at the front bowed to them and then led the group into a towering marble hall. Inside, about 100 goblins were perched on high stools behind a long counter. They were busy with various tasks, some weighed coins with copper scales, others examined gems with eyepieces, and many were hurriedly jotting notes in large account books. The hall was lined with countless doors, each leading to different vaults and areas. Several goblins, armed with bows, guided people in and out. "How can I help you?" asked one of the goblins from behind the counter. Perched on a high stool, he managed to look down at the visitors, an air of condescension barely concealed. "Professor McGonagall." Professor McGonagall is renowned in the British wizarding world as a master of transfiguration, her prowess rivaled only by Dumbledore, one of the greatest wizards of the age. With decades of teaching experience, it's no understatement to say her former students are spread throughout the UK. Even the goblins at Gringotts, known for their usually unflappable demeanour, could not afford to display outright arrogance in front of Professor McGonagall. Chapter 7 Gringotts Wizarding Bank. "I would like to request the currency exchange service for this year's first-year students." "Oh, is it that time again?" The goblin behind the counter hoisted himself up to get a better look at Ivon and Hermione, who stood next to Professor McGonagall. He scrutinized them and asked, "Excuse me, who needs to exchange Muggle currency?" "It's Miss Granger." "Sorry, Professor," Ivon interjected before she could continue. "I'm curious, how much can this money be exchanged for?" Professor McGonagall glanced at Ivon, slightly confused by his question, but after catching a subtle blink from him, she understood. "Miss Granger and Mr. Ambrosius both require the exchange service," she clarified to the goblin. Although Hogwarts offers scholarships for financially disadvantaged students like Ivon, these funds typically only cover the purchase of basic materials and school supplies. Therefore, Ivon chose to forego the scholarship in favor of applying for the Muggle currency exchange service instead. "Ivon, do you have enough money?" Hermione asked. She had brought about £2,000, which could theoretically be exchanged for approximately 400 gold galleons at the current rate of £5 to 1 galleon. However, in practice, young wizards from Muggle families are limited to exchanging up to 100 galleons per year. Moreover, the exchange rate is subject to fluctuation. For instance, if a large amount of Muggle currency is exchanged for galleons in a short period, the rate of £1 to 5 galleons could shift dramatically to 150, or even 1:500. To the goblins, Muggle currency is practically worthless. For them, it's no more valuable than waste paper. So, the most strategic approach would be to purchase gold in the Muggle world first, then exchange that gold for galleons at Gringotts. Although this method could lead to gold depreciation resulting in diminishing returns on the number of galleons received, the goblins' long-standing affinity for gold mitigates this issue somewhat. Given the limited global reserves of gold, the goblins are more than willing to acquire all available gold from the Muggle world, even at lower prices. After all, they are effectively the only market for such transactions. If Ivon were to bring several tons of gold, the goblins might see it as an opportunity to recalibrate the value of gold to the equivalent of cabbages, a tactic to safeguard their financial interests. "Mr. Goblin, how many galleons can this gold be exchanged for?" Ivon asked, placing a box of gold on the counter with assistance from Professor McGonagall. He was mindful to control the quantity of gold he presented, keen to prevent the goblins from gaining too much leverage. Gold! The goblin exclaimed upon opening the box and discovering rows of small, shiny objects that appeared like tiny yellow fish. Ah, it's really these golden little beauties. Mr. Ambrosius, correct. The goblin adjusted his glasses. Based on the current rate of gold to galleon exchange, these can be traded for 250 gold galleons at Gringotts. Upon hearing this figure, Ivon's expression turned frosty. It was clear to him that substantial deductions had been applied. Okay, he said tersely, concealing his frustration. Ivon did not haggle over the exchange rate, instead, he accepted the deal outright, much to the surprise of Hermione and Professor McGonagall. He silently noted this transaction, deciding to let the goblins enjoy their moment of triumph for now. Meanwhile, Hermione exchanged her pounds for 80 gold galleons. After leaving Gringotts, Professor McGonagall inquired about the box of gold Ivon had brought with him. Professor, I acquired all my gold through legitimate means, Ivon assured her. He explained that as a child, he had once predicted lottery numbers published in a newspaper and won the third prize, which he used to better the conditions at the orphanage. Additionally, Ivon occasionally used his savings to place bets on sports events. He was cautious with his prophecies, ensuring not to exploit them excessively, and always kept his betting within reasonable limits. However, Ivon omitted certain details from his explanation. For instance, he didn't mention how he had used transfiguration not disguise magus, as there's no mention of such a spell in canonical Harry Potter texts to alter his appearance and open multiple bank accounts in the Muggle world. This was part of his preparation for an independent life after leaving the orphanage. With similar discretion, he had ensured his safety and anonymity despite his considerable wealth through careful use of his magical skills. That's incredible, Hermione exclaimed, her eyes wide with amazement at Ivon's capabilities. Before, when she had imagined someone predicting the future, she had whimsically thought about lottery numbers but never expected to actually meet someone who had successfully done it. Even Professor McGonagall was momentarily at a loss for words, impressed and somewhat bewildered by Ivon's prudent use of his prophetic gift. Ultimately, Professor McGonagall could only advise Ivon to be cautious not to reveal magical secrets to Muggles and to refrain from excessive gambling. With that, she decided to move on from the topic. The trio left Gringotts, and Professor McGonagall instructed them to review their shopping lists for Hogwarts. Hermione, with her characteristic eagerness, promptly recited the list from memory. Uniform. 3 sets of plain work robes, black. 1 plain peaked hat for daytime wear, black. 1 pair of protective gloves, made from dragon hide or similar material. 1 winter cloak, black, with silver fastenings. Note, all student clothing must have name tags attached. Textbooks. Standard Book of Spells, Grade 1. A History of Magic Magical Theory. A Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration. 1000 Magical Herbs and Fungi. Magical Drafts and Potions. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. The Dark Forces, A Guide to Self-Protection. Other. 1 Wand. 1 Cauldron, pewter, standard size 2. 1 set of glass or crystal vials. 1 telescope. 1 brass scales. Students may bring 1 owl, 1 cat, or 1 toad. Oh! There was also a line, parents are kindly reminded that first-year students are not allowed to bring their own broomsticks. After finishing the list, Hermione looked at Ivon and Professor McGonagall with enthusiasm. The latter smiled and praised, it seems that our Miss Granger is well prepared. Professor McGonagall appreciates young witches like Hermione who are eager to learn. Like Hermione, Professor McGonagall, who is of mixed blood, once had a similar desire to prove herself equal to any pure-blood wizard. Ivon, shall we go buy the textbooks first? Hermione's thirst for knowledge was evident. Her only shortcoming is her tendency to take everything written in books as absolute truth. Okay. Ivon and Hermione headed to Flourish and Blots, captivated by the rows of books filling the store. Meanwhile, Professor McGonagall instructed them to stay at Flourish and Blots while she went to purchase cauldrons, gloves, and other supplies. Having been a professor at Hogwarts for many years, McGonagall knew exactly where to get the best quality for the lowest price. Professor McGonagall is such a good teacher, Hermione remarked, admiringly. It would be great if all professors at Hogwarts were like her. To others, Professor McGonagall might appear strict and traditional, but to Ivon and Hermione, she was a figure of quiet pride, stern on the outside but deeply caring beneath that facade. Well, this cat lady might be a bit old. Chapter 8 Mr. Ollivander. Let's go pick out the first year textbooks. Hermione couldn't wait to pull Ivon towards the rows of bookshelves. They didn't choose to buy second-hand books. Some people may think that the notes of senior students on second-hand books can better assist learning. But it only limits the understanding to the level of the previous student who made the notes. For the two, second-hand books are really unnecessary except for saving money. Especially Hermione, she needs new books because it gives her more space to take notes and highlight key points. Please pack Miranda Goshawk's Standard Book of Spells, Grade 1, Grade 2, Grade 3, Grade 4 for me. Ivon bought all the textbooks that a young wizard would need in the next few years at once, which made Hermione envious. Unfortunately, Hermione's gold galleons were not enough for her to be so generous. Fortunately, Ivon promised the little witch that he would lend her those advanced textbooks, which greatly improved Hermione's favor and completely let go of the last bit of grudge in her heart. Both of them were born as muggles, but Ivon was more talented than her. Not only that, Ivon's modesty, gentleness, strength, and wisdom won the little witch's admiration. Ivon had read the original book and knew the little witch's personality. Hermione at this time was a typical person with high IQ and low EQ. She was domineering and rigid and didn't know how to adapt. Fortunately, Ivon had his own way. As long as he regarded the little witch as a somewhat willful sister, Ivon found her much more tolerable. For a young girl, a bit of petulance was no big deal. Ivon, you know a lot. Had it been anyone else, Hermione might not have been so receptive. But facing Ivon, a boy of her age who was both more knowledgeable and mature, Hermione instinctively chose to trust him and sought to amend her own shortcomings. Because Professor McGonagall hadn't returned yet, Hermione stayed in Flourish and Blots with Ivon to read books. However, Ivon learned faster than Hermione. Whenever she struggled with a concept, she found that asking Ivon resulted in simple and clear explanations. Of course, it wasn't a one-way street. The two had different learning styles and focuses. Hermione preferred to memorize texts verbatim, ensuring she missed no details. In contrast, Ivon focused on understanding the key points and essentials, which often led Hermione to point out details that Ivon overlooked on his first pass. This approach brought them closer together, and they became good friends who shared ideas and studied together. Ahem. It was unclear how much time had passed when Professor McGonagall, returning from her errands, observed this congenial scene. She cleared her throat and smiled. It seems you two are getting along quite well. Yet. Ivon praised, Hermione is the smartest girl I have ever seen. Smartest. Being labelled as the smartest by Ivon made even Hermione blush a little. Thanks, Wavy Dash, the young witch, fighting back her embarrassment, declared proudly, I mean, obviously. But Ivon, you are the smartest one. Growing up, Hermione had never conceded that anyone was smarter than her, and Ivon was the only exception. Is that so? Now, Professor McGonagall was delighted that they had become such good friends. My clever little sir and lady, pack up your things, it's time to choose our first wands. Wands are tools used by wizards to aid in casting spells. One of the defining features of wizards in the Harry Potter universe, as opposed to other magical realms, is their reliance on wands for spell casting. However, this need isn't absolute. The function of the wand is to channel the wizard's magical power, allowing it to more accurately achieve the intended effect. Professor, Ivon inquired as he followed Professor McGonagall, is it possible to cast spells without a wand? Many young wizards ask the same question, Professor McGonagall responded, glancing at Ivon. Casting spells without a wand is known as wandless magic, which requires very advanced magical skills. She continued to explain, likening the young wizard to a newborn baby. The magical power within them is akin to the ability to speak, and using a wand to cast spells is like mastering a language. In simple terms, if casting spells with a wand is comparable to speaking in one's native tongue, then wandless magic is like learning to speak a foreign language. The same is true in reverse. When African wizards, who are accustomed to casting spells with gestures, suddenly use a wand, it does not necessarily enhance their spell casting. Instead, they might find it cumbersome and even risk losing control of their magic. Casting spells without the aid of spells or wands is considered the pinnacle of magical ability in this world, representing the ultimate realization of one's desires. With Ivon's current level of magic, he isn't yet ready to achieve such feats. His ambitions, while commendable, are somewhat premature. Ivon, you must understand that not every young wizard can wield such power, Professor McGonagall cautioned. The safety and stability of magic are more crucial than its convenience. The risks of magical mishaps are significant. There have been instances where even seasoned wizards have fallen victim to their own spells. I understand, Professor, Ivon responded. Though Ivon possessed substantial magical power, aside from the obscurus and his inherent blood magics, his abilities were largely limited to simpler spells, such as summoning objects from afar or making things vanish. Professor McGonagall looked at Ivon with a mixture of relief and fondness. She appreciated his intelligence and level-headedness, which made her more inclined to provide him with detailed guidance, unlike her approach with other young wizards. Soon, they arrived at a modest, somewhat dilapidated shop. The gold lettering on the door was flaking off, proclaiming, Ollivander, makers of fine wands since 382 BC. In the shop's dusty window, a lone wand rested on a faded purple cushion. The interior was simple, furnished with nothing more than a bench. Oh, good morning, Minerva. In the dimly lit room, a soft, aged voice emerged from among the wand boxes stacked nearly to the ceiling. The elderly man approached the counter and smiled, 9.5 inches, fir wood, dragon heartstring core, hard texture. He was recalling the wand that Professor McGonagall had purchased there years ago. Your memory has always been so sharp, Garrick. Memory? No, I always believe that it is the wand that chooses the wizard, Mr. Ollivander replied. He sighed, I still remember that day, it was just after I had taken over the shop from my father, and then I met a particularly discerning witch. Isn't that considered having a sharp memory? Hermione whispered into Ivon's ear, but Ivon coughed softly, signaling that Ollivander was watching them. The slightly embarrassed young witch stuck out her tongue and lowered her head. Chapter 9 The Ambrosius Family. It looks like 2 more energetic guests. Ollivander took out a measuring tape. Who will go first? You go first, Hermione. Ivon asked Ollivander to measure Hermione first. The old man first inquired about her dominant hand, and then began to measure the little witch. From shoulder to fingertips, from wrist to elbow, shoulder to floor, knee to armpit, and finally, he measured the circumference of her head. Each Ollivander wand contains a core of powerful magical substance, which is its essence, Mr. Ollivander explained while measuring. We use unicorn hair, phoenix tail feathers, and dragon heartstrings. Each Ollivander wand is unique, because no 2 unicorns, dragons, or phoenixes are exactly the same. Of course, if you use a wand that should belong to another wizard, it will never perform as well. Sorry, sir, Hermione interjected, I don't quite understand why you need to measure our body when buying a wand. After all, our bodies will continue to grow. Will the wand need to be replaced like clothes as we grow? The young witch was genuinely curious. If she had been alone, perhaps to leave a good impression on Professor McGonagall, she might not have asked such a question. However, Ivon's presence bolstered her curiosity. Ah, good question, Mr. Ollivander was not offended but replied with enthusiasm, remember what I said just now, it is the wand that chooses the wizard. The wand is not just a tool in the hands of wizards, but a companion that can accompany them throughout their lives. The wizard's body will change, but the wand will adapt. Mr. Ollivander. Hermione looked confused, you speak as if the wand has its own life. Of course the wand has a life. The old man laughed, but did not elaborate further. Instead, he selected a wand from the numerous boxes and handed it to Hermione, try this one, 10.25 inches, willow, dragon heartstring. Hermione took the wand, but as soon as she touched it, the old man shouted, no. Not this one. In her panic, Ollivander snatched it back, appearing as though he had touched something unclean. The young witch looked perplexed. She wondered if there was something wrong with her touch. Did I do something wrong when I touched the wand? What happened? Hermione turned to Ivon, her eyes filled with confusion. Ivon smiled and said, I think the wand has the ability to identify a wizard's magic. Didn't Mr. Ollivander just say the wand has life? Yes. Ollivander looked back at Ivon and smiled, every wand is unique, just as no 2 leaves in the world are exactly the same. Many wizards regard wands as mere tools, but they fail to realize that wands are actually the best partners for wizards. Wands evolve as wizards grow. They are part of a wizard's life. A wand is chosen when a young wizard enters school, becoming bound to their magical characteristics and growing alongside them. And when a wizard's life comes to an end, the wand will soon perish as well. Otherwise, with Ollivanders' 2,300-year history of wand making, there would be thousands, if not tens of thousands, of wands left in the world. But the reality is that there are not so many wands in the wizarding world because wands are closely tied to the lives of wizards. Well, it should be this one. Ollivander searched for a long time and finally found a new wand in the back. Try this one, 10 3/4 inches, vine wood, dragon heartstring. Hermione took the wand, and the moment the young witch grasped it, an inexplicable sense of intimacy arose. Wonderful! Ollivander laughed. Vine wands are very rare. They usually choose those who seek greater things, have foresight, and will do things that shock even their closest friends. I feel like it is an extension of my arm. Hermione waved the wand gently, leaving a trail of fluorescent light in the air. This sensation, like freeing a heavy shackle from one's body, was exhilarating. Hee hee. Ollivander watched Hermione's delight with satisfaction, pleased that his craftsmanship had found the right owner. That will be 7 gold galleons. The first wand purchase for young wizards is subsidized, hence the lower price. Hermione paid and also bought a set of wand care tools. Next, Mr. Ambrosius. Ollivander repeated Ivon's last name several times, seeming to recall something. Your last name reminds me of a legendary family. Legendary family. Hearing this, not only Ivon and Hermione, but even Professor McGonagall, who had been silently standing beside them since entering, became intrigued. Garrick, which family are you referring to? The surname Ollivander is very ancient, counted among the 28 sacred families in the British wizarding world. Professor McGonagall was curious about Ivon's background and hadn't expected to glean a clue from Ollivander. Minerva, you should know, right? We always mention that. Ollivander chuckled, then added playfully, Merlin's beard. Merlin's. Oh, Merlin's beard. Suddenly, it dawned on Professor McGonagall, and she turned to Ivon with a look of astonishment. Merlin, Merlin Ambrosius. In this world, Merlin is a wizard of immense power, a natural seer who could transform his appearance at will. Ollivander noted McGonagall's intense gaze, then turned to the equally surprised Ivon. The old man's expression shifted subtly as he asked, incredulously, Excuse me, Minerva, this couldn't just be a coincidence, could it? Professor McGonagall wanted to dismiss it as mere coincidence, but considering Ivon's extraordinary prophetic abilities, she hesitated. I'm sorry, Garrick, but I believe this child may indeed be a descendant of that singular lineage. Merlin's beard. Ollivander's eyes widened, and he stared at Ivon for a long moment. The great eternal family, I never imagined that such a noble bloodline would manifest in this era. Ambrosius means eternal and immortal, so in the wizarding world, those who inherited Merlin's bloodline are often called immortal descendants. The surname Ambrosius has left a legacy of the eternal family in the wizarding world. But I heard that the bloodline of the eternal family was cut off 1,000 years ago. No, it's not cut off, Ollivander corrected. It was scattered. Today, there is no Ambrosius family in the wizarding world because this family disappeared 1,000 years ago. The reason was not due to a disaster, but simply because the male heirs had died out. As the female descendants married, Merlin's bloodline was dispersed among the families, and only those who simultaneously awakened both the Prophecy-magus and the Metamorphosis-magus abilities could truly be called the immortal descendants. Chapter 10 It'll be a wand's honor. Ahem. Hermione was initially confused by the conversation. Sorry, I mean, are you saying Ivon is a descendant of Merlin? Who is Merlin? Presumably, no one in Britain doesn't know. He is a legendary figure invariably linked with King Arthur. Upon reflection, Ivon does indeed possess a strong prophetic ability. But Ivon doesn't seem to have the ability to become someone else. Hermione isn't jealous of Ivon. She simply wants the best for her friend. Yet, the title of Eternal Descendant sounds quite burdensome. The young witch doesn't want Ivon to be in danger. Well, based on what I've just demonstrated in the bookstore, I should still be considered a natural transfiguration magus. After Ivon spoke, he transformed into Hermione, Professor McGonagall, and Ollivander right in front of them. Gasp! Oh, my! The transformation was seamless, executed swiftly without any hesitation, leaving the onlookers astonished and incredulous. This is the first time I've seen such a complete human transformation. Professor McGonagall had witnessed transfiguration before, but those practitioners could only alter their appearance to a certain degree. However, Ivon could change his body shape, voice, and even minute details. If she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, Professor McGonagall would have suspected that Ivon had swallowed a bottle of polyjuice potion beforehand. Remarkable magic. Ollivander felt honored to witness the blossoming of a descendant of Merlin. He trembled with excitement as he extended his hand to shake Ivon's. "Welcome back, great Ambrosius." Ivon, inexperienced with his lineage, had received his Merlin bloodline from the system when he transmigrated to this world. Before today, he had no idea what the surname Ambrosius signified in the wizarding world. "Oh, sorry, I'm too excited," Ollivander said, his fingers trembling as he began to search for a wand suitable for Ivon. "Now, let me see which wand is honored to serve you." Facing the descendant of Merlin, a legendary figure in the magical world, Ollivander referred to choosing a wand as serving, reflecting his inner turmoil and reverence at that moment. "Partner? Please, is it aggrieved to be Merlin's knight? It is an honor for a wand to fight side by side with the greatest wizard. If you don't want to serve, there are other wands. If you do, Ollivander's wand shop has no shortage. Let's try this first." Ollivander handed a wand to Ivon. "Elm, Thunderbird tail feathers, 9.5 inches. Elm wands are usually chosen by those with grace, outstanding magical talent, and an innate noble temperament," Ollivander explained. "Its core comes from an extremely powerful adult Thunderbird. While wands with Thunderbird tail feathers as cores can be challenging to master, they possess great power and are especially valued by masters of transfiguration. The same material, just as lightning-struck wood varies greatly in age, so too does elm vary." The wand Ollivander presented was his masterpiece, crafted from the finest elm and Thunderbird tail feathers top materials in their respective categories. Its value far exceeded the usual 7 galleons, indeed, it was practically priceless. Buzz. When Ivon grasped the wand, a peculiar magical wave emanated from it. Ivon tried waving it and noticed that the flow of magic within him became remarkably smoother. "I feel like my magic power has suddenly become 10 times lighter." However, just as Ivon thought he had found the perfect wand, Ollivander shook his head. "No, not this one." The old man appeared very disappointed, as if his craftsmanship had not been fully appreciated. "Why?" Ivon asked, seeing Ollivander continue his search. Ollivander explained that the wand had not chosen Ivon but had merely surrendered under the overwhelming pressure of Ivon's formidable power. Ollivander's intention had been to find a squire knight for Ivon, not just any wand. If Ivon were likened to a king, then the wand should be a loyal minister to that king. The elm wand was too obsequious. Its readiness to serve was not genuine fealty but rather an attempt to ingratiate itself with its master, an act of sycophancy. This did not mean the elm wand was inferior. Ollivander still believed in the superiority of his creations. But such thoughts were merely Ollivander consoling himself. Reflecting on his own elm wand's obsequious behavior towards Ivon, Ollivander felt it was a blow to his pride. Choosing a wand is not about giving the best to someone. With no other recourse, the old wandmaker comforted himself by reciting the Ollivander family's guiding principle in wand making: the most suitable is the best. The implication was clear: my craftsmanship was inadequate, so I had to seek guidance from my ancestors. This wand is my father's last work and his proudest creation. Ollivander then selected a wand with a black shaft and a silver-white handle. The wand body is made of ebony, known for its impressive reputation and appearance. It is particularly effective for all types of offensive magic and transfiguration. Ebony typically chooses those who dare to be true to themselves. They do not follow the crowd, are independent, and often find themselves on the fringes of society. Moreover, the ideal wielder of an ebony wand is someone who can withstand external pressures and remain true to their convictions. Additionally, the handle of this wand was crafted from fairy mithril, a highly valuable alchemical material in the wizarding world. Ollivander's decision to offer it was a significant acknowledgement of Ivon. The wand core is made from the tail feathers of a phoenix. Wands with this core are particularly selective and challenging to master. Go ahead, give it a try. He handed the ebony wand to Ivon, who immediately sensed excitement from the wand upon touching it. If the previous wand had made Ivon's spellcasting 10 times smoother and easier, this one seemed to enhance it by at least 20 times, though not necessarily increasing the power 20-fold. Ivon himself possesses the talent for wandless casting, yet he often experiences a sense of blockage, which significantly impacts his control and casting speed. However, with this new wand, Ivon can easily perform spells that were previously challenging for him. For instance, if the difficulty of casting the Lumos spell is rated as 1, the Protego spell as 5, and perfectly casting a controlled fiend fire as 20, Ivon's ability in wandless casting rates only about a 2. This means without a wand, he cannot overcome the magical resistance required to cast Protego. In the Harry Potter universe, wizards do not utilize a concept akin to mana or magic points. In Ivon's perspective, the magic in this world is not so much about expending energy, but rather about using what is termed magical power to manipulate rules to achieve desired outcomes. Theoretically, as long as a wizard remains sufficiently focused, they could potentially cast spells continuously throughout an entire day. Nevertheless, mental fatigue is unavoidable. After all, even without engaging in any physical activity, humans naturally feel extremely tired at night, let alone when performing spell casting, which is as mentally demanding as doing intensive mental work. Chapter 11. It's really distressing. How do you feel, Ivon? Hermione saw Ivan's happy expression and knew he had found a suitable wand, so she was very happy for him. Ambrosius family, eternal bloodline, descendant of Merlin. These titles were too distant for Hermione. She only knew that Ivon was the first young wizard she met and her friend. Very good. Ivon shared his feelings with Hermione. He did not look down on the young witch because of his identity as a descendant of Merlin. He smiled and looked at Ollivander. Sir, thank you for selecting this wand for me. I think my father would be honored by your praise. But, I'm sorry to tell you that this wand is not the most suitable for you either. Ollivander extended his hand and motioned for Ivon to hand him the wand. Like the elm wand earlier, it is too deferential in front of you. Flattering ministers are not beneficial, and servile servants are even less so. What a formidable talent! Setting down the wand, Ollivander regarded Ivon with great emotion, his eyes filled with astonishment. Garrick. Sorry, Minerva, I lost my composure. Ollivander's magical skills are not profound, even within the British wizarding world, he is not considered a master. In today's wizarding world, if wizards were ranked, the top ones would be great wizards like Dumbledore and Voldemort. Compared with other wizards, it is not an exaggeration to say that the likes of Dumbledore and Voldemort are another kind of creature. Facing these two, numbers become meaningless. Even if confronted by dozens or even hundreds of powerful wizards at the same time, the two could easily defeat them. Below them are magic masters like McGonagall, Flitwick, and Snape. Most of them possess extremely high magic attainments in a specific field and can handle multiple opponents in battle. They are among the best in the wizarding world. Ollivander can be considered a master of wand making. However, in terms of magical prowess, he has not reached the level of Professor McGonagall and can only be regarded as an elite wizard. The categories of young wizards, senior wizards, adult wizards, and elite wizards do not have a strict division, the only differences are how much magic they have mastered and whether they possess a special skill. As for Ivon, Ollivander can only describe him in one sentence, a natural-born wizard. It is known that Voldemort managed to reach Dumbledore's level, but only after undergoing several dark magic transformations and even sacrificing his handsome appearance in the process. And Ivon? He was just about to enter Hogwarts and already possessed the magical talent that Voldemort sought at all costs. Next, Ollivander selected more than 20 wands that he believed were extremely powerful. Unfortunately, without exception, these wands were not very suitable for Ivon. It's really distressing, Ollivander muttered as he rubbed his somewhat weary eyebrows. How long has it been since I met such a discerning customer? At the same time, Ollivander felt a little vindicated internally. It turns out that it wasn't just him who faced challenges, his father had struggled just as much. Everything is relative, Ollivander realized, and this thought suddenly made him feel much better. His thoughts became clearer and his mood improved significantly. Ollivander was ready for a long battle. He was actually thrilled to have such a particular customer. Mr. Ollivander. Ivon noticed Ollivander's eyes spark with determination and quickly interjected, if you really can't find the right one, this oak wand is quite good. Among the many wands, the one made from oak wood with a dragon heartstring core had the highest compatibility with him. In terms of performance, it made spell casting 25 times smoother. With his potent magical ability, Ivon felt confident that he could successfully perform almost all known magic with this wand. After dozens of unsuccessful attempts, Ollivander's enthusiasm was fully ignited. Thus, Ollivander began frantically searching through boxes and cabinets, continually swapping out wands for Ivon to try. From his father, to his grandfather, to his great-grandfather. In half an hour, Ivon felt as if he had swiftly journeyed through the lineage of Ollivander's ancestors. No, no. There must be more, there must be more. Wait, little Ivon, just a little longer. Ollivander was in and out countless times, now sweating profusely. Ivon observed the pile of wand boxes to the side. His only thought now was hoping that Ollivander wouldn't collapse from exhaustion. Ivon was genuinely concerned that he might have to implore him not to overdo it. What's the big deal? Ivon smiled bitterly to himself, then glanced at Hermione beside him. The young witch had started to become accustomed to his unusualness. I remember it was placed near here. Ollivander seemed to be in a trance. He cherished this kind of discerning guests the most. Because the more particular the young wizard was, the more it validated his expertise. And Ivon, even by the standards of the Ollivander family records, was exceptionally discerning and had broken their ancestral record for the longest time taken to choose a wand. Ah! Found it! Suddenly, Ollivander unearthed a box from a corner. He excitedly returned to the counter and carefully slid the wand within the box toward Ivon. Come on, try this. Ivon opened the box and examined the wand inside. The wand resembled a piece of charcoal left after burning, with pits and bumps on its surface. If Ollivander hadn't presented it himself, Ivon might not have recognized it as a wand. This wand? Hermione felt that Ollivander was joking. This didn't look like a wand at all, it appeared to be just a piece of burnt wood. Ivon said nothing but silently took the wand out of the box. For some reason, the moment he held the wand, Ivon heard the cry of an unknown bird, which was very pleasant and melodious, akin to a song. Crack, crack. The next moment, golden lines resembling lava appeared on the wand, and the surface began to crack, with black wood chips falling away. Chi! Ivon held the wand upright in front of him, watching as flames shot out from the tip. They transformed into phoenixes with gorgeous tails, circling around Ivon. Perfect, too perfect. Ollivander was overwhelmed with excitement upon witnessing this scene. The old man had disheveled hair and looked like an old beggar who had just crawled out of a garbage dump. But on that dirty face, a pair of extremely bright eyes silently told of his joy. This is the victory of the Ollivander family. It was proof that he, Garrick Ollivander, had defeated the picky Ambrosius after 1,000 years. Chapter 12. This is a phoenix, not a phoenix. Perfect, too perfect. Ollivander was overwhelmed with excitement upon witnessing this scene. Is this the wand choosing the wizard? Ivon couldn't let go of the wand in his hand. This wonderful feeling was indescribable. As Ollivander said, the wand is the best partner of the wizard. It will accompany them throughout their lives and grow with them. In addition, after the soul reached level 4, Ivon was able to open a very special vision. In this vision, Ivon clearly saw a small figure perched on the wand in his hand. It was a very beautiful phoenix, singing a cheerful song. Chi-chi! The phoenix vaguely sensed Ivon's gaze. It tilted its head and flapped its wings to express the joy of awakening its new master. Cute little guy. Because there were others present, Ivon did not interact further with the little phoenix, but simply blinked at it. Every wand is unique, and this one is the most special one among all the wands made by the Ollivander family. Ollivander then told Ivon about the origin of this wand. A long time ago, my ancestors traveled to Bhutan, where Eastern magic originated. On that day, a phoenix perched on the top of a phoenix tree in Bhutan. It transformed into flames and perished with the ancient tree. This phoenix is a rare kind. According to the ancient letters by family posseed, this magical creature has been extinct for many years. If nothing unexpected happens, it is likely to be the only phoenix left in the world. Ollivander continued, unlike the phoenix, phocax, here, this is called phoenix in the Eastern magical world, it does not possess the ability to be reborn, but in contrast, they have almost eternal life. Many wizards in ancient times believed that the phoenix embodies immortal qualities. Ollivander is not very familiar with this rare phoenix, so he does not know the specific details about this sacred bird. My ancestor found the last remnants in the embers of the fire and used superb alchemy to craft it into a magic wand. It is neither solely a wand body nor a wand core, but a fusion of the two. But it is not complete, because there is still one last step. Ollivander had always thought it was just a legend in the family, but he didn't expect that someone could actually awaken it. The last step. Rebirth. Ollivander explained, the powerful and pure magic will breathe new life into the soul sleeping within this wand. In the old man's eyes, this wand has transcended the realm of ordinary wands. It is both a work of art and a miracle. I feel very honored because I have witnessed the miracle that my ancestors dreamed of. Ollivander firmly stated that he would not charge any fees for this wand. He slowly pushed the wand in Ivan's hand toward the boy. I believe that this wand will achieve unprecedented feats in your hands. Ivon didn't know what to say, but Ollivander was right about one thing, this wand is indeed a miracle. Chirp. The phoenix on the wand is in harmony with Ivon. It flutters its wings and perches on its owner's shoulder, as if to express its closeness to him. This phoenix is very different from Fawkes, the Dumbledore family phoenix that Ivon saw in the movie. First of all, Fawkes' scientific name is phoenix, which signifies the immortal bird. The wand in Ivan's hand comes from a phoenix. In the Harry Potter world, the phoenix the bird of rebirth and the phoenix immortal bird are both divine creatures born from flames, but they are not the same. The immortal bird phoenix can be reborn from its ashes and its tears have healing properties, while the phoenix is a rarer magical creature than the immortal bird. Ivon doesn't know whether the phoenix really existed in his previous life, but in the wizarding world, the so-called phoenix, red bird, and immortal bird mentioned by Muggles are actually present. The phoenix is the king of birds and can control flames. Although it does not have the ability to be reborn from ashes, it can consume flames and magical power, thus gaining eternal life. Furthermore, the phoenix blesses humans and brings them good fortune. Its beautiful song has the power to rejuvenate all things and save souls. Chi-chi. The little phoenix spread its wings again and flew around Ivon. Its flame-like hue and 5 tail feathers, each containing different colors and magic, made it look particularly sacred and majestic. It is indeed a divine bird known as auspicious. It is so beautiful. Ivon silently admired it, but it was a shame that those around him could not witness this scene. In their eyes, the wand in Ivan's hand was magical, but it was still just a wand. However, when Ivon looked in the mirror placed in the room, he saw a vision of a young man riding a massive phoenix, soaring through the sky. It was his future self. It seems that the phoenix is not dead. Ivon had a premonition that as long as he continued to provide magical power to the wand, the dormant phoenix within it could revive and be reborn. Go back first, little guy. The little phoenix seemed to hear Ivan's thoughts. It circled the wand a few times, then darted into the sycamore wand and disappeared. By the way, here are these. Ollivander took out a set of the latest wand care tools and gave them to Ivon for free. This made the little witch envious. Even Professor McGonagall muttered under her breath that she had been overcharged by Ollivander's father when she bought her care tools. Thinking about it, where is the profit from a wand that costs 7 galleons? If you really want to make money, it's through selling accessories. Thank you, Mr. Ollivander. Ivon did not decline the old man's generosity. I like this wand very much. After leaving Ollivander's wand shop, Ivon carefully placed the wand into a pocket he had specially sewn into his sleeve, ensuring that the wand could be quickly drawn if needed. Next, the three went to Madame Malkin's robes for all occasions to buy wizard robes. During this visit, Ivon asked Madame Malkin to modify his wizard robe, shortening the trailing hem and creating a specialized pocket in the sleeve for storing the wand. After seeing this, the little witch wanted to imitate it. Unfortunately, she was afraid that being unique would attract too much attention, so she only modified the sleeves. The purchase of the magic wand is the biggest expense. In addition to books, wizard robes, and instruments on the list, first-year freshmen can also bring a pet. Chapter 13 Pet Cat. Owls, cats, and toads, these are 3 pets that little wizards can choose. Because he had sufficient funds, Ivon decided to buy both a cat and an owl as pets. Owls are excellent companions for wizards, possessing a unique magic. As long as you think of the name and appearance of the recipient, the owl can accurately deliver the letter to them, provided there is no shielding spell around the recipient. So beautiful. Outside the pet shop, Hermione admired a pure white snow owl through the glass and was tempted to buy it. However, having spent a considerable amount of galleons on books, her financial situation for her first year at school was not very promising. I still have plenty of galleons, you can exchange some pounds from me, Ivon offered, noticing Hermione's interest in the pets. Despite their brief acquaintance, they had already come to regard each other as their first friend in the wizarding world. Hermione wasn't opposed to helping each other out. Forget it. Hermione hesitated for a long time, then finally shook her head. In the first year, I plan to focus more on studying. Pets might distract me. She wanted to adapt to life at Hogwarts first, then consider the issue of pets. Okay. Ivon walked into the magical menagerie. The interior was enchanted with an undetectable extension charm, making the space inside much larger than it appeared from the outside. Yet, the store was still quite crowded. The walls were lined with cages containing various creatures, venomous orange snails, large turtles adorned with gem-like shells, sleek black mice, various owls, ravens, multicolored cats, cruptails, and shape-shifting rabbits, among others. Ahem. Ivon discreetly covered his nose. The smell here is really something, ahem. With so many animals housed together, the air was thick with a mix of odors, challenging the olfactory senses. Hermione frowned, looked at Ivon, and whispered in agreement, the conditions here are really quite poor. Fortunately, Ivon had a clear objective. Hogwarts first-year students cannot freely choose their pets. After ruling out the owl they already have and the toad that Ivon finds very unappealing, the two young wizards headed straight to the cages filled with cats. Ivon activated his psychic vision, which helped him better perceive the magical fluctuations emanating from the cats. Ivon, what do you think of this one? Hermione tugged at Ivan's sleeve and pointed to a cage above them. Ivon looked up and saw a Persian long-haired cat with fluffy, soft ginger fur, bowed legs, and slightly pigeon-toed feet. Additionally, it had a peculiar flattened face, as if it had run into a brick wall head first. Noticing Hermione's interest, the odd-looking cat immediately gazed at the young witch with its yellow eyes and shook its large, furry tail like a bottle brush, seemingly eager to win her affection. Isn't it beautiful? Ivan's mouth twitched slightly. He struggled to understand the young witch's aesthetic taste. In his view, this peculiar Persian cat was so unattractive that it was almost a disservice to the general appearance of cats. However, Ivon did not outright refuse but instead called over a female clerk to inquire about the specific details of the cat. The clerk informed them that the cat's name was Crookshanks and that it had been in the store for almost a year. It has some nasal blood, but because it looks quite odd, customers are hesitant to buy it. According to the clerk's prediction, Crookshanks might be difficult to sell for another year or two. Oh, that's too pitiful. Hermione was genuinely fond of the large cat named Crookshanks. Upon hearing Crookshanks' name, Ivon immediately recognized the cat's identity. It was the birthday gift Hermione would buy in her third year. Ivon suggested that Hermione purchase it. He made the same offer as before, proposing that Hermione exchange some pounds for galleons from him. If Hermione felt the exchange rate was unfair, she could adjust it. For Ivon, pounds were just as useful in the Muggle world. Okay. Finally, under Ivan's encouragement, Hermione decided to buy Crookshanks. She felt a deep sympathy for Crookshanks' plight. He was so handsome, why didn't anyone like him? To this, Ivon could only respond, as long as you like it. Then it was Ivan's turn. He selected a grey and white kitten from the pet cats. The kitten appeared to be less than 2 months old. In terms of its lineage, it resembled Ivan's ragdoll cat from his previous life, with sapphire eyes and a magical aura that ordinary people couldn't see. Ivon wasn't sure what these lights signified, but among the various pet cats, this one's magical power was clearly more potent. Excuse me, how much is this ragdoll? Ragdoll. The female clerk wasn't familiar with ragdoll cats. Ivon explained, it's a breed of domestic cat developed by Americans around 1970. To my knowledge, this type of cat has been in the UK for less than 10 years. Sorry, I don't quite understand what you mean, sir. The wizarding world is largely isolated from the Muggle world, especially concerning recent changes. Most wizards are not well informed about such matters. The female clerk explained to Ivon that the ragdoll cat he was referring to was also the offspring of an Easel in the store, similar to Crookshanks. An Easel is a magical creature, and owning one typically requires approval from the Ministry of Magic. But this one, the ragdoll cat, is different from Crookshanks and does not inherit much Neasel blood. The clerk continued, if you like it, sir, I can offer it to you at a low price. Clearly, in the clerk's view, although this cat was beautiful, its limited Neasel heritage made it less valuable than Crookshanks in terms of price. Well, that's it. Ultimately, Ivon spent nearly 30 galleons at the magical menagerie, 25 of which were for Crookshanks, and the little ragdoll was only 5 galleons. Ivon checked the gender of the ragdoll and discovered she was female. Yumi was the name Ivon gave to the ragdoll cat, inspired by a game he played in his previous life, Magic Cat Yumi. She didn't possess a magic book, but now she had a master capable of performing magic. Chapter 14 Dumbledore. Ivon, thank you. Let's set aside Crookshanks for a moment. Ivan's offer to lend Hermione his advanced spell textbooks saved Hermione a lot of galleons. Humph, we are friends, aren't we? Ivon tousled Hermione's fluffy hair, causing the young witch a bit of embarrassment. But Hermione didn't pull away. It must be acknowledged that Ivon's presence alleviated the various uneasy feelings Hermione had upon her initial entry into the magical world. They are of the same kind, from the same place, and are each other's only friends. This concept took root in Hermione's heart like a seed. Before leaving Diagon Alley, the two agreed to study magic together. There are still 2 weeks before Hogwarts starts. Hermione plans to learn some spells in advance to avoid being bullied by those young wizards from wizarding families after school starts. During this time, Ivon also inquired with Professor McGonagall about the trace. The trace is a tracking spell that can locate the approximate position of underage wizards and detect magical activities within a certain range around them. When an underage wizard uses magic in front of a muggle or if someone around them uses magic, the Ministry of Magic's improper use of magic office is immediately notified. This notification is carried out through a contract magic that monitors underage wizards. Your wands have not been set with the trace yet. Professor McGonagall clarified, the trace is not set on wands, it is a type of contract magic. At the end of the first year at Hogwarts, students receive a summer vacation notice stating that young wizards are not allowed to cast spells outside of school, and students are required to sign their names. In the wizarding world, the name itself contains magic, and this notice also acts as a contract, which, to a certain extent, binds every underage wizard studying at a magic school. In addition, when a young wizard violates the rules and casts a spell outside of school, the Ministry of Magic will receive a notice. The existence of this notice is based on the magic contract, so it will record the location and time when the young wizard breaks the rules. As for what magic was cast and who cast it, the trace cannot determine. And that's why the kids of the wizarding world can get away with it. I see. Ivon nodded and decided to review the spells in the textbook with Hermione over the next 2 weeks and share experiences. Afterward, the three of them had lunch at the Leaky Cauldron. McGonagall used Apparition to send the two home and then returned to Hogwarts via the Fleur network. In the headmaster's office at Hogwarts, an old man stood behind the glass window. He had a head of silver-white hair, waist length, and so long that it could be tucked into his belt, and blue eyes that seemed to possess magical vision, as if they could see through people. The old man's nose was very long but twisted, appearing to have been broken at least twice. He is the headmaster of Hogwarts, the most powerful wizard in the wizarding world today, Albus Dumbledore. Albus. Suddenly, Professor McGonagall walked in from the headmaster's office. I have something to tell you. Professor McGonagall did not keep him in suspense and directly informed Dumbledore about all the events concerning Ivon, including the occurrences in Ollivanders' wand shop. To be as detailed as possible, they even used the pensieve to more clearly observe Ivon through McGonagall's eyes. Ambrosius. The blood of the eternal family. Dumbledore listened to all this patiently. He was well aware of the legend of Merlin's descendants. It seems that our school will welcome another talented young wizard this year. Albus. Professor McGonagall widened her eyes, seemingly puzzled by Dumbledore's calm demeanor. Okay, I understand. Dumbledore soothed Professor McGonagall's concerns. He opened a glass jar on the table, took out a struggling cockroach from it, and asked, "Would you like some?" Professor McGonagall took a deep breath and maintained her composure. "No, thank you." Although the cockroach cluster was not made of real cockroaches, but rather enchanted syrup, the sensation of it struggling in the mouth and the sound it made when bitten were enough to make Professor McGonagall averse to this peculiar candy. Crack, crack. Dumbledore chewed on the cockroach cluster and said calmly, "It seems you are quite concerned about that boy, Minerva." "Yes, I am worried." Professor McGonagall did not finish her sentence, but Dumbledore understood her implications. However, the old man shook his head and said, "They are different, Minerva. Once bitten, twice shy." Professor McGonagall had a favourable impression of Ivon. But it is precisely because she is fond of this child that she hopes Ivon can take the right path. To be frank, Professor McGonagall feels immense pressure and worries that she may not be capable enough to teach Ivon effectively. She discussed the matter with Dumbledore primarily to seek additional guidance for Ivon to prevent a repeat of Tom Riddle's issues. "Don't underestimate yourself." Dumbledore looked into Professor McGonagall's eyes and smiled. "You are the deputy headmistress of Hogwarts, my finest transfiguration professor." The old man could empathize with Professor McGonagall's feelings, reminiscent of when he first encountered Tom Riddle, both elated and apprehensive. "And we must acknowledge it." Dumbledore continued, "Tom was an exceptional wizard, wasn't he? Setting aside external influences, Voldemort's achievements in magic are indeed formidable. Thus, Dumbledore offered a few more words of reassurance to McGonagall before she departed. Ivon Ambrosius, hey! After Professor McGonagall left, Dumbledore slowly sat down. The old man gazed out at the night sky, but his thoughts drifted to Gellert Grindelwald. The blood of Ambrosius, tied to the descendants of Merlin, last notably manifested in Grindelwald. Of course, Grindelwald did not possess the ability to make precise predictions or transform physically as Ivon could at such a young age. The two were not related by blood. After all, the descendants of Merlin were scattered across Europe. This blood awakening seemed more like a miraculous gift of magic bestowed randomly upon wizards. Ha! My old friend! He is more gifted than you. Dumbledore marvelled at Ivon's talents but did not ponder whether this child would bring positive or negative changes to the wizarding world. All they could do was impart some wisdom as elders, nothing more. Chapter 15 Trying the New Wand. Standing at the door of the orphanage, Ivon felt as if he was entering another world. Next to Ivon was a cart, laden with all the items he had purchased in Diagon Alley. On top of the cart, 2 cages housed an owl and Uami respectively. Compared to the sedate owl, Uami was actively observing the Muggle world with curiosity. The fluffy little cat attracted a lot of attention as soon as she arrived, especially with her agile movements which were truly endearing. Okay, we're home. Ivon wheeled the cart into the orphanage, greeted Mrs. Mina and the staff, and then headed straight to his room. Opening the cage, Ivon lifted Uami out. The little cat didn't struggle, she was very intelligent and recognized that Ivon was her master. Meow. After a cute meow, Uami settled beside Ivon submissively. She looked around, but ultimately shook her head with a hint of regret, as if she was slightly disdainful of the shabby room. Well, the conditions are indeed poor. Ivon doesn't speak cat, but his 4-point soul vision intuition allowed him to grasp what Uami meant. Don't worry, I will have someone arrange a new house while I study at Hogwarts. When we come back from Hogwarts, we can live in the new house. Over the years, Ivon has changed his appearance more than once, making his initial financial accumulation through football betting and other gambles. Now, Ivon had accumulated enough money to live a comfortable life. Moreover, he had fabricated a wealthy non-existent individual through various means such as insurances, bank accounts, real estate investments, and cash flows. According to Ivon's plan, he would be adopted by this fictitious rich man and then move into a villa registered under the rich man's name. This was what Ivon meant when he said he would leave the orphanage after the first year. Hee. Meow. Are you hungry, little one? Ivon took out the snacks he bought in Diagon Alley from the box, served some to Uami, and then took out the first year spells textbook and began to read. Professor McGonagall had mentioned that the trace would be cast during the first summer vacation for freshmen at Hogwarts. This meant that for the next 2 weeks, Ivon could practice magic without any concerns about being detected by the Ministry of Magic. Okay. Dear me, your future looks exciting. But you still have to be careful. The obscurus within Ivon was immensely powerful, and any careless use could cause significant damage. Even though he now possessed a wand that granted him remarkable control over his magic, mastering the use of this power was still a major challenge. Let's try it first. Ivon opened the standard spells, elementary. He read through the book swiftly, almost absorbing 10 lines in a glance. Charms are different from transfiguration spells. Charms imbue specific properties onto an object or creature, while transfiguration spells transform it into something entirely different. In the first year spells textbook, a total of 9 spells are recorded: the softening charm, the severing charm, the unlocking charm, the levitation charm, the locking spell, the mending charm, the banishing charm, the wand lighting charm, and the fire-making spell. It doesn't seem that difficult. After reading through the textbook, Ivon mentally reviewed the spells several times, then organized the key information and categorized it for better understanding. Let's try it first. Start with the simplest one. Theory is theory, after all, the actual effectiveness of a spell depends on its execution. Ivon pulled out his wand from his sleeve, flipped the book to the section detailing the wand lighting charm, and chanted the incantation, Lumos. As he spoke, a silver-white light emanated from the tip of his wand, serving as a small light source. It was bright yet not blinding, casting a reassuring glow that seemed to illuminate the soul. Success! Ivon was not overly excited about successfully casting the spell. He was already familiar with magic, capable of casting spells wandlessly and controlling the obscurus. What intrigued Ivon more was the novel experience brought by casting his first spell with a wand. Just as I thought, the magical power in this world isn't merely a type of energy, but a force. In essence, magic is like objects of varying weights, and magical power is the strength required to lift them. Consider the Lumos spell as an example. The magical power it requires is very minimal. Low magical power requirements indicate that the force needed is weak and the difficulty of execution will correspondingly be lower. So, how about this? This time, Ivon decided to cast a spell wandlessly, without verbal incantations. Almost immediately as he waved his wand, Ivon knew he had successfully cast the spell. However, with the successful execution of the spell, a sense of unease crept into Ivon's heart. Did I use too much force? Oh shit! Meow! Amid Uami's cries, Ivon was blinded by a dazzling white light. The intense brightness stung his eyes, and even Uami, who had been eating, leapt up in alarm and scurried to hide at Ivon's feet. Ah, sorry, Uami, are you okay? Ivon, momentarily dazed, rubbed his eyes and took a moment to recover. Looking down at Uami, who was climbing up his legs with the help of his trousers, he noticed the snacks scattered all over the floor. The little cat stared up at him with a look of reproach in her eyes, clearly upset by the disturbance. Well, that, little Uami, life is full of surprises, we have to adapt to unexpected situations. In simpler terms, he hoped the cat would forgive her owner, right? Uami might not understand human speech, but she could certainly pick up on Ivon's dismissive tone. Meow. The adorable little cat meowed in displeasure, expressing her dissatisfaction with her less than considerate owner. It was just an accident, I promise. Ivon smiled apologetically, acknowledging the risk of the spell spiraling out of control. He lifted Uami onto the table and filled her bowl with a generous amount of cat food as an apology. Then, as she licked his fingers, it seemed as if she was saying, "Bad master, but Uami forgives you." This little foodie. Ivon muttered under his breath, his thoughts drifting back to the mishap with the spell. Just as I suspected, the illumination spell shouldn't use too much magical power, otherwise, it causes unpredictable alterations to the spell. Failure? Mistake. Ivon furrowed his brow slightly. No, I think it's more of an expansion, an enhancement of the wand lighting charm. Lower level spells don't demand high magical power, meaning that if Ivon wants to cast them successfully, he must control his magical output. This proves challenging for someone with potent magical abilities like him. Chapter 16 The Concept. If the magic index required for successfully casting the wand lighting charm is 1, then Ivon was using 10 times that amount of magic power. Previously, Ivon couldn't achieve this because he lacked a magic wand. But now, with the aid of the Phoenix wand, as long as Ivon understands the technique, he could control not only the wand lighting charm but also more complex spells, like a level 20 fiery spell or even spells with a difficulty of 30. Uami, close your eyes. With this in mind, Ivon took out a pair of sunglasses from the cabinet and drew the curtains closed. Uami, picking up on her master's cues, quickly lay down and adorably covered her eyes with her paws. With everything prepared, Ivon picked up his magic wand, recalled the sensation of casting without a spell from before, and waved the wand again. Buzz! Again, without uttering a sound, a light as bright as a flash bomb illuminated the room. However, this time, thanks to their precautions, neither Ivon nor Uami was affected by the brightness of the spell. Interesting. Ivon removed his sunglasses and smiled. Just as I thought, as long as you remember the feeling when casting this spell, you can replicate it. But, what is this? A flash charm, or a vision-affecting charm? Although he had only experimented with one spell, Ivon successfully discovered that the same spell could manifest differently depending on the amount of magic power used. One thing is certain, the effect of the spell is not directly proportional to the strength of the magic power. In essence, magic in this world differs from that in fantasy games. You cannot simply inject more magic power into a small fireball to transform it into a large fireball or a pyroblast. In fact, even a slight variation in magic power can completely alter the outcome of a spell. Take the Lumos charm, for instance. Casting it with a magic power of 1 results in a simple illumination, whereas using a power of 10 transforms it into what might be called a flash spell. However, this shift from 1 to 10 in magic power isn't merely a change in brightness. Ivon's soul, elevated to 4 points, seemed to intuitively warn him against arbitrarily altering the strength of magic power in a spell. A mere failure is manageable, but an unexpected result could be disastrous. Standard spells. Elementary recounts an incident where a wizard named Baruffio mispronounced a spell saying S instead of F and ended up with a bison on his chest. This illustrates the potential dangers of losing control over a spell. With Ivon's current level of magical skill, random modifications to spells could easily harm him. If it were just himself at risk, Ivon wouldn't worry. Being a silent person, even a direct hit from a blasting curse might leave him unscathed. But what about others? Hermione, the owl, this room, and even the friends and staff at the orphanage. These considerations compel Ivon to proceed with caution. If he truly wants to continue experimenting, he should either find a secluded area or ensure thorough protective measures are in place to prevent accidents. Come to think of it, I recall Harry Potter had a classmate who seemed to cast an explosive spell no matter what spell he attempted. How did he do that? Ivon was still puzzled about the specific reason behind the classmate's unusual spell casting. He was certain that the little wizard's issue was not merely due to an excess of magical power. In short, it's quite excessive to increase magical power tenfold all at once. Let's master the first-year spells first. Utilizing his magic wand to channel his magical power, Ivon easily cast the 9 spells listed in the first-year textbook. There were no mishaps, he executed each spell smoothly and effortlessly. It was as natural as instinct. During this practice, Ivon successfully memorized the precise amount of magical strength required for the successful execution of these spells. He didn't attempt to experiment further immediately but chose to continue studying, spending an afternoon to deeply ingrain the contents of the first-year textbook in his memory. After dinner, Ivon started reading the second-year spell textbook. The second-year textbook listed a total of 6 spells: the dancing spell, the engorgement charm, the freezing charm, the general counterspell, the obliviation charm, and the squeaking spell. With the aid of his magic wand, Ivon successfully cast these spells effortlessly on his first attempt, just like the first-year spells. Among these, Ivon singled out the freezing charm for special attention. Hermione, please knock that orange. Meow. Meow. Immobilis. Good girl. Now that. Knock that. Immobilis. He repeatedly cast the freezing spell using his wand, aiming to gain a clearer understanding of the magical power required to successfully perform this spell. Will. During this exercise, Ivon discovered another intriguing facet of magic, the necessity of a firm will in spell casting. The role of the will attribute is to stabilize the output of magical power, which manifests in the ability to cast spells smoothly and ensure that magic does not spiral out of control. For instance, the freezing charm in his practice seemed more akin to reducing the speed of molecular movement, as understood in scientific terms from his previous life, rather than merely freezing. Of course, it isn't exactly the same, but there are similarities. The effect of the freezing charm is to decelerate the movement of objects. Its manifestation somewhat resembles time deceleration, allowing both living and non-living things under its influence to move at a slower pace. So when casting this spell, you need an unwavering intent to slow things down. Ivon surmised that the essence of the spell was likely a form of psychological suggestion to fortify his resolve. Casting spells without incantations is possible because you are sufficiently skilled and have integrated the spell into your instincts. Just as with one's native language, when you see the word horse, you instantly think of the animal. Ultimately, it boils down to basic human cognition. If that's the case. Ivon closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and then raised his wand. Hermione, observing nearby, saw this and immediately knocked an empty snack box onto the table. This was precisely the support and assistance Ivon had requested from Hermione while he practiced the freezing charm. Slow down. Ivon opened his eyes and waved his wand, channeling the necessary magical power for the freezing spell while focusing all his will. Quietly, the box began to float in the air. Upon closer inspection, one could see that the box was descending bit by bit at an exceptionally slow pace, following its original trajectory. Fuck yes! Ivan's eyes sparkled, and his grip on the wand tightened slightly. Just as I suspected, the essence of the spell is a strong psychological suggestion. The phrase "slow down" that Ivon had silently recited in his heart was in English language and not Latin, which the HP books used to cast spells. No, it shouldn't just be termed as English. More accurately, it was his interpretation and the necessity of the concept of slow down. Thus, Ivon succeeded in casting a silent freezing charm, not by silently reciting the incantation, but by embracing and internalizing the essence of the command. However, Ivon was not content with just this achievement. He continued to practice, aiming to further analyze the magical power requirements for the freezing charm through repeated execution. Chapter 17 Magical Memory. The second-year spells are indeed more challenging than the first-year spells. Ivon realized that he only needed to cast the first-year spells once to analyze the type of magical power required for successful execution. However, the second-year freezing charm proved more complex than its first-year charms. It took him a full hour to master the magical strength needed to release the freezing spell. If the magic power of the wand lighting charm is measured at 1 scale, then releasing the freezing spell requires 3 scales, and during this process, maintaining sharp concentration is essential. Ivon possesses the soul of an adult and has experienced 2 lifetimes. Thus, his will is significantly more resolute than those of first and second-year wizards. Moreover, these scales are referenced against the wand lighting charm as the basic unit. According to Ivon's assessment, without the wand, he can only safely release magic up to scale 2. Beyond that, his magical power becomes unstable, potentially leading to various mishaps. Is it due to a lack of proficiency? Next, Ivon dedicated himself to practicing the silent freezing spell repeatedly, only setting down his wand when he felt nearly proficient. By this time, dusk was approaching outside the window. Calculating the time, Ivon realized he had been silently practicing the freezing charm for over 4 hours by himself. Hey! Ivon relaxed, relieved. Fortunately, wizards in this world don't have a concept of mana. As long as they remain energetic, they can cast spells indefinitely. Thinking of this, Ivon slid the wand back into his sleeve, positioning it in the easiest spot for quick access. Pa! Ivon clapped his hands a few times and took several deep breaths to fully relax his body and mind. Now, let's try casting the freezing charm without a wand. For this attempt, Ivon also performed a divination for himself. The result. Ivon didn't see an image of himself successfully casting the spell, but he did see himself having breakfast safely the next morning. Beside him, Hermione was also happily eating. Very good. Okay. First I need to cast Immobilis without a wand. I've somewhat mastered casting it by just saying stuff like stop and slow down with a wand. Let's just see if I can do it wandless with the incantation Immobilis. Ivon felt reassured by the outcome of the divination. Then, let's begin. Hermione. The ragdoll cat caught the hint in Ivon's eyes and promptly knocked the already battered box away. This time, Ivon didn't use a wand or any gestures. He simply stood there, watching the flying box. Immobilis. Ivon focused intensely and silently recited the incantation for the freezing spell with precise accuracy. Whew! Silently, the box that had been falling quickly just stopped in mid-air. Upon closer inspection, it was apparent that the box hadn't stopped completely but was still descending, albeit very slowly. This effect mirrored that of the freezing charm with a wand perfectly. It really worked. Ivon was thrilled by the success of his wandless casting. Sure enough. Ivon mused, the mastery of spells is akin to muscle memory. Not only can spells be cast without incantation, but they can also be executed without a wand. But Ivon sensed something amiss and furrowed his brow. It seems that I can only cast this charm without a wand. His ability to cast spells without a wand was still limited to a second scale of magical power, which reflected his own innate capabilities. The complexity of the freezing spell is rated at 3 scales, 3 times that of the wand lighting charm. However, due to his high level of proficiency, Ivon managed to perform exceptionally well with his current magical capabilities. This implied that even if Ivon didn't increase his magical power, as long as he could enhance his proficiency with each subsequent spell, he could manage to cast them wandlessly. This can be seen as solving one problem. Wizards in the Harry Potter world are overly reliant on their wands. Ivon needed to be prepared to manage without a wand or to fight in situations where his wand might be lost. After dinner, Ivon fed Hermione and his newly acquired owl, then picked up his wand once more to practice other spells from the spellbook. This session was dedicated to refining his wandless casting techniques. He did not opt for the more challenging spells from the second year, instead choosing the safer levitation spell from the first year curriculum. The levitation spell, known as Wingardium Leviosa, is perhaps the most famous spell in the Harry Potter world. The magic scale of the levitation spell ranges between 2 and 3. Ivon discovered something intriguing: the smallest unit on the magic scale isn't represented by the illumination spell because the levitation spell requires a fractional value. Not 2.5, but rather 1/3. Specifically, to cast the levitation spell, one needs to utilize 2.3 times the magical power required for the illumination spell. This too is a spell that exceeds Ivon's current ability to cast without a wand. However, after extensive practice with the wand, once Ivon could control floating objects at will, he successfully mastered the wandless casting technique for the levitation spell. But soon, Ivon encountered a frustrating realization. He initially thought he could practice spells with a wand and then progressively transition them to wandless casting. However, he soon realized that the number of wandless spells he could retain was limited. Don't be confused. He can cast each spell effortlessly with a wand, but he couldn't do that without a wand. To compare, it's like a professional motorcyclist learning how to drive a jet on his own. This limitation wasn't about skill slots or spell bars, but rather Ivon's magic memory, akin to muscle memory, which has a capacity limit. When Ivon masters a spell to the extent that he can cast it wandlessly, adding more spells to his repertoire causes the earlier ones to blur in his memory. Ivon estimated that he could remember the magic flow of the spells when using a wand and cast about 10 spells without a wand. Moreover, Ivon currently can't cast spells without a wand for spells that have a difficulty rating higher than 5 scales. Is it because the 3 attributes of thinking, will, and mind are too low? Ivon opened his attribute panel. System, open my attributes. Attributes. Soul, 4, rare. Magic, 5, legendary. Physique, 1, ordinary. Thinking, 3, outstanding. Mind, 2, excellent. Will, 2, excellent. A score of 1 is considered ordinary, while 2 is rated as excellent by the system. As far as I can surmise, the strength of magical power determines the upper limit for a wizard. Me? Me-ah. Ha. Ivon suddenly plopped on the bed, cradling Yumi, stroking the cat while pondering, without sufficient magical power, no matter how hard you try, you can't unleash powerful magic. Just like Ivon, he doesn't know the upper limit of the scale that the magic power associated with a 5-point magic attribute can reach. Due to the scarcity of reference spells, Ivon can't ascertain the limit of his magic 5 attribute. The difficulty of the freezing charm is just above 3 scales, and the spell with the highest magical requirement from the 1st to 4th grade basic spells tops out at about 10 scales. For instance, the shield spell isn't among the basic spells, but is a spell that's typically learned in the 5th year. Ivon, having read the original Harry Potter books, recalls the incantation for this spell Protego. Thinking about protecting your convictions, and upon reciting the spell, an invisible, transparent shield forms in front of the wand to block frontal attacks. Chapter 18 The Grangers. Protego. Standing up from the bed, Ivon waved his wand, but unfortunately, he failed to cast the shield charm. Ivon tried several more times, but without exception, all attempts ended in failure. What's going on? Ivon frowned. My magical power is definitely sufficient, but why can't I cast it? Suddenly, Ivon recalled the description of the shield spell. You need to have a strong belief in protecting yourself. Strong, protect yourself, belief. Yumi. Ivon thought of a solution. He picked up a box from the ground and threw it in front of his adorable ragdoll cat. Come on, hit the box towards me. Meow. Yumi didn't quite grasp what Ivon was attempting, but the obedient cat followed her owner's instructions. The ragdoll cat swiped its paw and slapped the box towards Ivon's forehead. Protego. Seeing the box hurtling towards his face, Ivon waved his wand reflexively, and a faint white light emerged from the tip of the wand but quickly disappeared. Pop! The next moment, the box collided with the air in front of Ivon, as if it had struck an invisible wall. Success! Ivon couldn't help but smile. Ma! Meow! He picked up Yumi and laughed. No wonder the shield charm failed. It turns out that this type of magic requires emotional engagement to be successfully cast. Ivon was pleased with himself for independently mastering the shield charm without any formal instruction. You know, this is a spell that even many Aurors in the Ministry of Magic cannot cast proficiently, and Ivon is just a young wizard who hasn't even started school yet. Thus, he continued to work diligently, focusing on refining his execution of the shield charm. He first spent 2 hours practicing with his wand, and another hour working on silent casting techniques. Regrettably, the demands of the shield charm were too high, and Ivon couldn't yet internalize it as his own wandless magic. According to my estimates, the magical power required for the shield spell is about 10, which is 10 times that of the wand lighting charm. The wand is a marvelous invention. Ivon set the wand down, then picked it up again to appreciate the enhanced effects it provided. As mentioned earlier, Ivon's sycamore wand with phoenix core is particularly well suited to him. After just a few attempts, Ivon could successfully cast most of the spells from the 1st to 4th grade textbooks. Of course, the effectiveness and potency of these spells are not assured, they require substantial proficiency in attributes that Ivon is still exploring. That's enough for today. Ivon glanced at the alarm clock on his bedside table. Unbeknownst to him, it was almost 9 o'clock. This indicated that Ivon had been practicing magic for nearly 8 hours since his return. There's no physical exhaustion, but I do feel somewhat mentally tired. Ivon likened casting spells to solving complex problems. While it wasn't physically draining, the mental exertion was significant. Meow. Even Uami seemed to pick up on Ivon's fatigue and started yawning. Ivon slept well that night. Moreover, he noticed that after a session of spell casting, the turbulent magic within him, which he referred to as Momo, seemed much more subdued. It was as if he had found a way to channel Momo's normally restless energy. Ivon was uncertain if this would mitigate the threat posed by the obscurus. But for now, he had no other concerns. Practicing and learning new spells was what Ivon enjoyed the most. The tranquility of the obscurus was an unexpected bonus. Suddenly, while Ivon was in the communal bathroom, he caught sight of an image in the mirror. It was an owl. There was a letter tied to its claws, and Ivon saw Hermione's name on it. Clearly, this was an unintended trigger of his divinatory skills. A letter from Hermione to me. Ivon quickly finished his personal hygiene routine, returned to his room, and then opened the window. As expected, Hermione's owl arrived shortly thereafter. Coo. Ivon removed the letter and, using a wandless levitation spell, summoned a bowl of cereal to welcome the owl. He quickly read through the letter from Hermione. The young witch invited Ivon to visit her home. After learning about Ivon's background, knowing that he too was Muggle-born, and that the orphanage where he lived wasn't far from her home, Hermione's parents hoped that Ivon could stay with the Granger family for a few days. Clearly, Hermione had her own motives. The little witch seemed intent on catching up on her magical studies before the school term at Hogwarts began. Ivon, known as a descendant of Merlin, intrigued her. Hermione was proud, but she acknowledged that her magical talent might not match Ivon's. But for Hermione, that was not an issue at all. Facing a knowledgeable person, Hermione wouldn't feel envious, instead, she would strive to learn humbly. Though they were of similar age, in Hermione's view, Ivon was like a talented, humble, and gentle senior, worthy of her earnest study. Staying at hers for a while, Ivon considered it and felt that Hermione's proposal was quite appealing. Firstly, he needed to practice magic, but the space in the orphanage was too confined. Moreover, Ivon was concerned about being seen casting spells, and he was reluctant to cast memory-altering spells on familiar people. Staying at Hermione's house would not only allow him to interact and study with her but also provide a much larger space for practicing magic. Overall, this invitation would alleviate many of Ivon's concerns in the 2 weeks before school started. Thank you for your invitation. After deciding, Ivon quickly wrote a reply, and then waited patiently at the orphanage as Mr. Granger had requested. Around 9 o'clock in the morning, Mr. Granger arrived at the orphanage where Ivon was staying. Mr. Granger presented his dental qualification certificate, and Ivon agreed to stay at the Granger's house for a few days since he and their daughter were about to start the same school. Studying together would help them both better prepare for the upcoming school term. Mrs. Mina considered briefly and, after instructing Ivon to call daily to report his safety, she consented to their plan. Fantastic, Ivon. In the car, the excited little witch shared with Ivon the various magical facts she had read about the day before. Those books are really well written, especially the basic spells for first-year students. I managed to successfully cast a spell yesterday. Magic is so incredible. Remembering the astonished expressions of her parents after her successful spell, Hermione felt almost disbelieving. Chapter 19 Platform 9/3/4. Yet. Ivon nodded and turned to Mr. Granger in the driver's seat. Thank you for your invitation, Mr. Granger. I feel fortunate. Mr. Granger sounded excited as well. By the way, may I call you Ivon? Of course. So, Ivon. Mr. Granger continued, I heard from Hermione that you've mastered quite a bit of magic. When we arrive, that is, could we possibly? Mr. Granger, I'm just like you, an ordinary person in this world. Ivon encouraged Mr. Granger to not be so formal and to simply see him as his daughter's classmate, but yes, I do know quite a bit about magic. As Hermione mentioned, the spells in the textbook aren't too difficult. Really? Mr. Granger smiled, pleased, though Hermione seemed a bit downcast. Ivon, how many spells have you learned? I've only managed the wand lighting charm and the mending charm. Well. Ivon didn't intend to conceal his capabilities. As mentioned, Ivon aimed to lead a more powerful and respectable life this time around. Not like the protagonists of the animes where the MC has the power of a god or something and then is dumb and naive, hides his power, then gets discriminated by royalty and racist hot bitches just for thinking that he needed a carefree life and brings more drama to himself instead of carefreeness, which could have been solved if he had shown his powers and is not to be messed with in the first place. Snap! Ivon snapped his fingers, and various small items that had been placed behind him and Hermione began to levitate. Hesso, under the astonished gaze of Mr. Granger, Ivon made the objects float and dance in the back seat of the car, which left both father and daughter incredibly impressed. Mr. Granger was amazed because he had never witnessed such magic before. As for Hermione, being somewhat knowledgeable about magic, she recognized what Ivon had just performed. That was wandless casting. No, Ivon, you cast the levitation charm without even saying the spell. Hermione exclaimed, oh my goodness, Ivon, you can cast this spell silently and without a wand. If Ivon's abilities were only slightly superior to Hermione's, she might feel some pressure. However, Ivon's talents were truly extraordinary. The boy in front of her possessed magical skills that Hermione could not match. Is this impressive? Mr. Granger, unaware of the significance of silent and wandless casting, simply thought it was incredible. Very impressive. Hermione then asked Ivon if he could explain to her father about his lineage. Actually, it's no big deal. Seeing Mr. Granger's puzzled look in the rearview mirror, Ivon smiled and explained, I only learned where my talents come from when I purchased my wand yesterday. Talent? Dad, Hermione interjected with evident pride, Ivon is a descendant of Merlin. What? Mr. Granger was momentarily taken aback. Merlin, as in the Merlin associated with King Arthur's legend. That very Merlin. Hermione admitted, I was shocked too when I first heard. That's really something, Mr. Granger mused, clearly amazed. For him, the realms of wizards and magic were already fascinating enough. A descendant of Merlin, that was a concept beyond his imagination. Ahem, it's not as exaggerated as it sounds. Ivon noticed Mr. Granger looking at him as if he were a mythical being, akin to a figure like Jesus Christ, which made him quite uncomfortable. However, Hermione didn't step in to moderate her father's awe but instead embellished Ivon's legendary status further. Even in the wizarding world, descendants of Merlin are considered more myth than reality. No wizard today has ever seen. I believe Ivon might be seen as a Merlin of our time in the future. Ivon's endless praise had found its moment. This was it. We are here, Mr. Granger announced as he parked the car alongside a neatly maintained street. Welcome, Ivon. The Granger residence was a 3-story villa encircled by lush bushes, not far from their dental clinic located just off the street. In England, being a dentist is quite lucrative, positioning the Granger family comfortably in the upper middle class. Mrs. Granger, embodying the quintessence of a British lady, extended a warm welcome to Ivon upon his arrival. After settling his luggage in the guest room prepared by Mrs. Granger, they all gathered for a lavish lunch. During the meal, Ivon showed several magical tricks that not only dazzled Mr. and Mrs. Granger but also earned admiration and a hint of envy from Hermione. Later in the afternoon, Hermione eagerly sought Ivon's mentorship in magic. With his guidance, she quickly mastered the basic first-year spells, much to her delight. That evening, at dinner, Hermione proudly demonstrated her newfound spell-casting skills to her parents, eliciting awe and proud proclamations from them about having a brilliant little witch in the family. Time flew swiftly, and soon it was the last day of August. Following the instructions on their Hogwarts admission letters, Mr. Granger drove Ivon and Hermione to King's Cross Station. Do you really not want Mum and Dad to come with you? The Granger couple wanted to accompany Hermione, but the little witch told her parents not to worry. With Ivon, there is nothing to worry about. After nearly half a month of getting along, the relationship between Ivon and Hermione has made great progress, and they have almost become good friends who can talk about anything. In addition, both of them are from the Muggle world, so it is not an exaggeration to say that they are childhood sweethearts. Uncle, Aunt. Ivon said seriously, don't worry, I will take good care of Hermione. Then I'll leave it to you, little Ivon. Hermione, listen to Ivon when you get to school. The couple had a very good impression of Ivon. In their eyes, Ivon was obviously more reliable than Hermione. Got it. Got it. Hermione waved goodbye to the two of them in dissatisfaction. The little witch pulled Ivon over and started to enter the station with her luggage. Seeing that their daughter did not look nostalgic at all, the Granger couple looked at each other, and they were quite amused. Platform 9 3/4. Looking at the platform written on the ticket, Hermione looked at Ivon in confusion. Ivon, have you seen this platform? There are platforms 9 and 10, but there is no platform 9 3/4. Ivon naturally knew where this platform was. Even if he didn't know, with his sole attribute of 4 points, as long as he opened his spiritual vision, he could find traces of magic around. Look at them. Without waiting for Ivon to tell her, Hermione noticed several people dressed strangely, rushing into a wall with their children. It seems that the platform should be between platforms 10 and 9. Yup, let's go. The two looked at each other, and imitated those people, rushing into the wall one after another. Ivon only felt that his body passed through a thin film of nothingness. When they opened their eyes again, they saw a crimson steam locomotive parked next to the platform full of passengers. Chapter 20 Neville. The sign on the train read, Hogwarts Express, 11 o'clock. The two looked back and saw that the place where the ticket gate used to be had now become a wrought iron archway with the words, Platform 9 3/4 written on it. The thick smoke from the steam locomotive lingered above the chattering crowd, and cats of various colors darted around under people's feet. Amid the buzzing of the crowd and the noise of dragging heavy luggage, owls also hooted harshly, one calling the other. Ivon, I'm a little nervous. Hermione kept looking around, her attention mainly focused on the little wizards who were similar to them. The little witch was very worried that her magic level could not keep up with the teaching at Hogwarts, and she was also afraid that the little wizards from wizard families would look down on her. You have to believe in yourself, Hermione. Ivon smiled and said, You are very good, definitely not worse than them. Ivon said this from the bottom of his heart. The half-month of getting along with each other allowed Ivon to see Hermione's talent. In his estimation, if Hermione's talent is revealed in the form of attributes, except for the soul, mind, and physique, which cannot be judged, Hermione's best attribute should be thinking attribute. The little witch's memory and logical analysis ability are extremely amazing. Even Ivon, who has 3 points of thinking attribute, can't compare with her. From this, it can be inferred that Hermione's thinking attribute is likely to have reached 4 points. You know, reaching 3 points of attribute is outstanding, which means 1 in a million. And like Hermione, it is not an exaggeration to say that it is rare to see someone like her in the magic world for decades. Except for thinking, Hermione's magic power should not be high, but only reached 2 points of excellence. However, Ivon thinks that Hermione's magic talent should also be in the forefront among the excellent ones, close to 3, but not reaching the level. Then there is the attribute of will. Ivon thinks Hermione's self-discipline is amazing. Think about it, a person who can spend all his time on studying and thinks that doing exercises, taking exams, and reciting are fun. Ivon just wants to say that her perseverance is so terrifying. Ivon can spend time learning magic, but Hermione is a super student who can memorize every book she has read. Anyway, Ivon can never do Hermione's level. Even if he has 2 lives, Ivon's willpower in his previous life is not that strong. Therefore, he doesn't think there is anything wrong with not being as good as Hermione in terms of will. In addition, the attribute is fixed, and it will not happen that the will of 12-year-old Hermione's enrollment age is 12 years old, is 3, and the willpower increases after adulthood. 3 points of will refers to growth, not the current value. For example, suppose Hermione and Professor McGonagall both have a thinking attribute of 4, but the latter's thinking ability is obviously stronger than the former. Similarly, Ivon's magic power is 5, but he can only say that he is stronger than the 11-year-old Dumbledore. Thinking 4, magic 2, will 3. Such attributes have surpassed most wizards, and Hermione in the original book finally became the Minister of Magic, which is a manifestation of her excellent talent. But I'm still a little worried. Hermione began to recite the textbooks she had read before, so as to make herself forget the terrible future of being crushed by other little wizards. This scene made Ivon chuckle a little. Let's go, let's find a seat. Ivon and Hermione pushed the cart forward on the platform, ready to find an empty compartment. The first few carriages were already crowded with students, some of them leaned out of the window to talk to their families, and some were playing in the seats. Soon, the two found a compartment with only a round-faced boy sitting in it. "Excuse me, can we sit here?" Ivon used the levitation spell to make the trunks float behind him. Hermione poked her head out from behind him and looked at the boy in front of her carefully. "Well, he doesn't look very smart." "Yes, you can." The boy sat inside shyly, lowering his head and looking very shy. "Ivon Ambrosius, this is my friend Hermione. Hermione Granger." After the two sat down, they introduced themselves. "My name is Neville." Neville said timidly, "Neville Longbottom." "Hello." Ivon said to himself that the boy in front of him was the hidden savior in the original Harry Potter book, the Gryffindor Sword's chosen one. Thinking so, Ivon manipulated the gift to let them float to a high place by themselves, and piled his own cage, Hermione's owl and Crookshank's cage in the corner of the carriage. "Amazing." Neville was stunned by the scene. "How did you do it?" "I mean, Neville, you can do magic." Hermione was confused. She asked in confusion, "Are you from the Muggle world like us?" "No, my family are all wizards." Neville's voice was not loud. He looked at Ivon, his eyes full of envy and admiration. "But I can't do magic." According to Neville's description, his talent was very poor, which made many members of his family think that he was not qualified to go to Hogwarts. Once, Neville's uncle threw him out of the window thinking he was a squib, but he bounced up by himself without causing any harm, which made his family very happy. When they received the admission letter from Hogwarts, Grandma and others were very happy. Neville has a good personality. Ivon and Hermione quickly became friends with him, and then began to share each other's experiences and family information. Neville had no aversion to the fact that the two were born in Muggle world. Although the Longbottom family is pure blood, they are not opposed to half-blood and Muggle wizards. "Ivon, you are amazing." This is the nth time Neville has said this. Hermione asked, "Ivon is of course amazing, but haven't you seen a young witch or wizard as smart as Ivon?" In Hermione's opinion, children from wizard families must be very amazing. They must have learned magic since childhood, and each of them is a knowledgeable genius. Well, except Neville. According to Neville, he doesn't know any magic. Hermione thinks this should be an exception. "I've never seen it." The Longbottom family also has relatives and friends, but Neville has never seen a little wizard like Ivon who has mastered magic before entering school. Especially when Ivon casts a spell, it seems that he doesn't even use a wand. "How did you do it just now?" Neville asked curiously. "I heard from my grandmother that you need a wand to cast magic, but even after getting a wand, I don't know how to cast magic."
Thanks for listening.